Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 331. Jun Moxie's doubts. I won't ever dare to do that. I was merely advising the Venerable May to consider what I'm saying. Li Ju Tian was calm. The heaven and the earth must not be disgraced. You mustn't mention the Holy Lands. I'm afraid that you may have committed a taboo. Consider. To consider? One shouldn't overestimate oneself. But, when has this matter ever been worthy in my eyes? And, what can you do even if the elusive world of immortals, the supreme golden city, and the illusionary blood sea unleash their full wrath at my Tian Fa? Then, that individual continued in an arrogant manner. Even Yun Chen hasn't dared to show himself in this world since 8 years on my word. I'm confident that I can kick out the 3 great entities from my Tian Fa as well. I'll wait and see if the Venerable May says so. Li Ju Tian finished speaking, and his figure started to float down from the rooftop. This indicated that the conversation was over. Then, another screech arose from a faraway spot in the forest. Then, an earth-shattering rumble started to echo. East, west, north, all 3 directions reverberated with a loud howl. Dust rose up and coerced the entire sky. Innumerable Xian beasts rushed out of the woods and the mountains. They charged in orderly formations. These Xian beasts rushed from the outer regions of the city in one direction south. It seemed as if the Tian Fa's lord had commanded his troops. However, the strength of the troops in these 3 directions had left every head in the southern heaven city to explode. There were around 10 golden-crowned Xian tigers on the eastern side. They had a sole silver horn on their heads. These Xian tiger moved in formation. They were being led by a white Xian tiger king. However, its crown was also golden in color. They moved at extreme speeds. Soon, all kinds of Xian beasts rushed out from the surroundings in neat and orderly formations. Their movements and formations didn't seem any different from that of a military parade. And they continued to charge at lightning speeds. Their skills didn't seem beneath a spirit Xian expert. 9th level Xian tigers. Solitary Falcon gazed and exclaimed. He stood behind Li Ju Tian. There are so many of them. And they're led by a Xian tiger king. And he might even be at the peak of the 9th level. And then, a similarly sized squad of white jade Xian lions was spotted in the west. There are white jade Xian lions in the west. Dongfang Wenqing spoke in a serious manner. These 2 men were aware that Jun Moxie was young and inexperienced. So, he was unlikely to recognize high-level Xian beasts. So, they were deliberately trying to explain what they were witnessing since they were aware that he was beside them, and would be able to hear their words. Then, the sounds of a heavy stampede-like sound arose from the north. A huge bear led scores of giant bears and charged past. The mountain-splitting bear. It's also a level 9 Xian beast. The Tian Fa forest is so strong. These troops had barely covered half of the distance. Then, multitudes of shadows flew out from the rivers and mountains, and soared into the sky. They were seemingly of various magnificent colors in make. They circled disorderly in the sky for a while. But then, they assembled together, and organized themselves in a neat formation. They seemingly took the shape of a cloud, and skimmed over the southern heaven city. There are too many of these flying Xian beasts, just too many. Dongfang Wendao wrinkled his nose, and bared his teeth as he stared. Each one of them is at least at level 8. My good mother. How did you provoke such a powerful reaction? How on earth did we land such a battle on our hands? A head-exploding sound echoed through the valleys and mountains. This was the sound produced by the Xian beast stampeding feet against the ground. It sounded like an incessant torrential rain to anybody who listened to it. One could image the sheer number of these beasts. Everyone had unknowingly stationed themselves at a high altitude. All color had left their faces as they looked at the incomparably formidable sight. The sight in front of their eyes could only result in such a feeling. There were tens of thousands of powerful Xian beasts in front of them at present. Good heavens! This world has gone crazy. Tens of thousands of Xian beasts had bubbled up. Moreover, not a single one of these beasts was lower than level 6. Almost everyone's mouths opened wide in an O shape. However, there was one exception to all that gaping. It was Jun Moxie. He could see all of this like the rest of the people. However, no one could know what he was thinking. He had countless questions in his mind. Everyone knew that there were two major powers on the Xian continent, the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuehan Manor. No one could deny that the strength of these two clans was unsurpassable. Then, a few additional names had emerged from the mouth of this mysterious lord of the Tian forest. Elusive World of the Immortals, Supreme Golden City, and the Illusionary Blood Sea. What do those names represent? What do they signify? Where are these three holy lands? What's the extent of the tyranny of the people from these places? Why have I never heard any of these names? He then recalled the words that Li Ju Tian had just spoken, the heaven and the earth must not be disgraced. You mustn't mention the holy lands. Why does this Li Ju Tian place these three holy lands at the level of the heaven and the earth? What did this mean? The entire world recognizes the 10 peak experts. 8 of them are the great masters. Then, there's Feng Wan Yun, and the supreme assassin Chu Chi Hun. But, why does it sound like this Lord of Tian doesn't hold them in a high regard? What does this mean? From what I've heard and seen so far, I'm convinced that this Lord of Tian has abundance of strength. Even Yun Bichen hasn't dared to show himself in this world since 8 years, on my word. I'm confident that I can kick out the 3 great entities from my Tian as well. These words were still ringing in his ears. A mere few words had compelled the greatest master Yun Bichen to not show himself for so many years. What kind of strength would be needed for that? The others had a look of horror on their faces. However, Jun Moxie had a tranquil expression on his face, unlike the others. But innumerable waves were raging inside in his consciousness, since many problematic questions had started to arise in his mind. This Lord of Tian seemingly has such strength. Moreover, he has decided to show himself in public, so why didn't he wait a bit longer? He could have easily waited a bit longer until the war broke out on a full scale, and he could have easily inflicted a very heavy damage onto this coalition in that case. This coalition would have surely suffered a terrible blow in that case. In fact, this fight between men and Xian beasts would have been over once and for all if that had been the case. Moreover, this dispute arose 2 months ago. But he didn't appear once. So, why is he showing himself now? He has already waited for 2 months. Couldn't he have waited a few more days? It can't be denied that his appearance would have overwrought his enemies. His extreme strength is like that of a god. It would hit the morale of the experts. And the morale of the force will be invariably destroyed. But this issue shouldn't be on his mind given his true strength. So, what's he worried about? The method of the coalition's attack shouldn't be an issue either. He could have easily changed the tide of the battle and everything else with mere one appearance of his. What's the purpose of all this? These series of questions made Jun Moxie's head spin. He rubbed his eyes only to find another unusual thing when he opened them. Everyone had moved to the same higher area ever since the Xian beasts had started to stampede towards the south. However, there was one exception. A lofty and solitary figure stood motionless. A young man stood alone and unafraid under the Baili family's banner. His face exuded calmness and indifference. His bright expression clearly portrayed, "These events are of no interest to me. None of these things have anything to do with me." He stood indifferently. Moreover, it seemed like he was almost lifeless. It seemed as if no one in the world held any importance in his eyes. A sudden interest in the youngster was suddenly kindled in Jun Moxie's heart. A very strong interest. Not for anything else but the fact that this solitary figure had reminded him of his own aloofness and indifference to society at large in his previous life. Wasn't I like this once? Jun Moxie was undeniably an oddball himself. Therefore, he had never taken interest in showing goodwill to others. And this is the reason why he had always taken keen note of the solitary people on his vicinity. Dongfang Wenqing finally collected himself and noticed that Jun Moxie wasn't beside him anymore. He immediately looked away from the waves of the Xian beasts and frantically started to look for his nephew. Jun Moxie was obviously an apple of the three Dongfang brothers' eyes. They had come to treasure him very deep. The three brothers had even dreamt of taking him back to the Dongfang family for a while. After all, how could their mother not be happy at the sight of such a capable grandson? In fact, they had even hoped that the connection between a child and a mother might help awaken their sister who had lain unconscious for the past 10 years. Therefore, the three men behaved like hens with a newly hatched chick around him. They didn't intend to let their nephew out of their sight for even a bit. There was no denying that his miraculous agility techniques made for a great defense. However, that still didn't bring any relief to them. The people from the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor had gathered there. Which one of their people would ever act with nobility? And these men would cry rivers if anything bad ever happened to him. Therefore, they immediately tailed him and stationed themselves beside him once they realized that Jun Moxie wasn't at their side anymore. Even that spectacular scene couldn't take precedence over the issue of his safety. Do you know who that person is? Jun Moxie pointed at the solitary youngster. He's someone from the Baili family. And also someone who that family is bound to abandon. Why do you ask? Dongfang Wendao tilted his head and stole a glance. He then replied with a disdain-filled voice. Why? Why are they bound to abandon him? Why would they do that? Jun Moxie asked in a confused tone. Look at these people. Who amongst these guys from the big families seems like a fool to you? Who doesn't understand the severity of this uprising? These people were pressured by the Shui Han Manor and Li Shui Tian to send help. So, they had no choice but to come and fight. But, has any family sent the entirety of their strength? Moreover, all these men are peak sky Xian experts. Do you see any weak men amongst them? In other words, these men have adequate strength to have a chance of saving their lives and fleeing away if this coalition doesn't prove to be enough to deal with this threat. And these families have less chance of suffering a great fall in their strengths in that case. However, have you seen any of the other families send their young masters? Dongfang Wenqing asked in a ridiculing manner. So, they're throwing his life away? He's just cannon fodder? Jun Moxie seemed somewhat shocked. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 332. Baili Luo Yun. Exactly. Any youngster with such cultivation who comes here to fight the Xian beasts is basically throwing away their life. Insignificant Jade Xian experts don't have any chance at survival when faced with so many high-level Xian beasts. What else could it be if it isn't throwing away one's life? However, to say that they are meat for slaughter isn't exactly very pleasant to hear. Dongfang Wenjian gave a ruthless smile. Xia, don't start to believe that your agility skill set is too exquisite. You will find it difficult to escape if you're thrown to the enemy. Even your marvelous skill set won't help if you're surrounded by them. Therefore, you mustn't act recklessly. And you must never leave our sight. But that youngster is only 25 or 26 years old. And it's quite clear that he's already at the peak of the Jade Xian realm. I believe he's just a step away from reaching the Earth Xian. So, he's a very rare talent if he has reached such a level at this age. Why wouldn't his family keep such a talent close to them? Why would the Baili family allow this youngster to throw away his life? Isn't this pitiful? Jun Moxie asked in a confused manner. The reason for that isn't very difficult to understand. In fact, it's rather simple. This youngster wasn't born from a legitimate wife of the family. His mother was a concubine. Dongfang Wenqing seemed sorry as he smiled. That youngster is named Baili Luo Yun. He's one of the rarest talents to be ever born into the Baili family. Families that practice Xian Qi usually have a member with a high cultivation comb out the meridians of a newborn baby. This is done in order to reduce the chances of illness in the infant. Moreover, this helps to lay down the foundation for the infant's future cultivation. However, no one combed Baili Luo Yun's meridians when he was born. But it didn't matter since he had already started to cultivate at the age of 3. And he had broken through to the 9th Xian level when he was 10. In fact, he had already reached the peak of Silver Xian realm by the time he turned 15, and then broke through to the Gold Xian soon after. Thereafter, he broke through from the Gold Xian realm to Jade Xian realm by the time he turned 20. And he has now reached the peak of the Jade Xian realm. He can easily be called the foremost in the younger generation after one looks at his cultivation. Not many people can compare with this man. However, it's true that you can't be considered in the same category since you can fight a spirit Xian with your moves even though you are only a Jade Xian expert. In fact, you may even win with those moves of yours. You truly are a devilish talent. But this guy is a rare and exceptional talent. He may not be a legitimate son, but he still shouldn't have been treated in such a way, right? He's still of their blood even if he's illegitimate. So, what difference does it make if he isn't the heir to the family? He's still a rare and talented expert of their younger generation. In fact, it's easy to imagine that he may reach the Sky Xian level in 10 years given the speed of his current advancement, and the achievements he had already made at such a young age. Moreover, he may even reach the Spirit Xian in 30. Are you telling me that they're abandoning such a talent because he isn't a legitimate son? Isn't the Baili family being very unwise? Jun Moxie was shocked at what he had heard. He found it very difficult to understand such a matter. It was important to know that such a talented youngster was extremely uncommon. And this fact didn't hold for the powerful families of the world alone. Even the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor witnessed such a talent once in a lifetime. In fact, one would be hard-pressed to find many of them even if they searched the entire Xian continent. Any other family would have treated such a talented person as its gem, and would have guarded them very closely. In fact, such a person would receive the same care that the 3 Dongfang brothers divulged towards Jun Moxie's safety. So, one could only imagine the importance of such youngsters. That's not all. There's more to it. His father is the main reason behind all this. His grandfather is his real father. He had gotten drunk, and had our pet a maid. He had thereafter formed a relationship with her. And Luo Yun was born as a result of that relationship. And that too as the eldest son of the family. However, the Baili family has never acknowledged his status. Moreover, they went ahead and mistreated the youngster. His innate talent obviously alienated him even further. And the treatment became worse as his Xian cultivation bettered due to his outstanding talent. Therefore, his dishonored identity inside the family meant that he was treated like a servant. In fact, even servants received better treatment at times. This obviously led to several resentments in his heart, and he naturally wanted to take revenge. This sense of revenge became even more prominent once he broke into the Jade Xian realm. And then, an unfortunate incident happened. Dongfang Wenqing's face was full of pity as he continued. But the thing is, he didn't even initiate that incident. In fact, this matter is quite straightforward. He had just gone to his home, and the legitimate young masters tried to stir trouble with him. They started to taunt him, and received a very severe retaliation from him. The reasons behind his anger are easy to understand. He didn't have any status in the family even though his cultivation was far ahead of the others who took help from outside and had received the cleansing meridians treatment at a young age. However, he still belongs to their family's bloodline. And bloodline matters a lot. That was one of the main reasons he wasn't killed on the scene. But some people in the Baili family weren't willing to let him off the hook. And this journey to Tian Fa provided them with a golden opportunity to get rid of him. So that's what it is. Jun Moxie let out a long sigh. He then murmured, Baili Luo Yun, a cold light flashed in his eyes. No one could guess his thoughts. However, we also feel that the Baili family has caused a great harm to themselves with these actions. It's like what you had just spoken. This youngster has outstanding innate talent. He's only marginally behind you in that respect. We believe that he could become a new great master in 30 to 50 years. It's important to know that a family's strength and prestige increases if they have someone as strong as a great master. This is especially true for powerful families. In fact, they leave behind their former peers in one giant leap. The Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor are no different. The chance for such a man to be born in any family comes in hundreds of years, once in several generations. So, I don't understand why the Baili family would let go of such an opportunity. This makes me regret their decision somewhat. I mean, how could the Baili family be so short-sighted? Perhaps they fear that he'll take revenge upon them once he's strong enough. Maybe there's another reason. Dongfang Wenqing shook his head and chuckled gently. But we aren't related to them in any way. In fact, it's better for us that a potential great master will be done away so soon. Moreover, it gives us a reason to celebrate. After all, a rising hero tramples on others' bones. And every strong person who ascends to the top has blood in his hands. We 9 families certainly aren't enemies. But we are potential competitors. The leaders of every powerful faction had remained standing at a high altitude this entire time. But they finally started to come down. They then decided to proceed to the hall in order to discuss the prevalent matters. Dongfang Wenqing stole a glance into the distance and said, I will accompany your third uncle to the meeting, since those dregs from the Silver Blizzard City won't abstain from mockery. But they won't be too reckless if I'm around. Then he chuckled softly and left. He was gently pushing Jun Wuyi's wheelchair towards the hall a moment later. Jun Moxie looked at his third uncle sitting in the wheelchair and thought, third uncle's legs are fine now. But I don't know when he can stand up properly. When will the blood general truly stand tall and proud? and show the majesty of his defiance to the entire world? However, everything depends on strength. Incomparable strength. And strength is equal to talent. Then, Jun Moxie suddenly took long strides after he had pondered a bit. And he started to walk towards Baili Luo Yun. The others from the Baili family had started to head back at this time. 3 men laughed and chatted freely as they entered their tent. They didn't even spare a glance at Baili Luo Yun, who stood at the entrance. In fact, Baili Xiongfeng, the leader of the family's contingent, gazed straight ahead as he calmly entered the hall to discuss the crisis. Baili Luo Yun lifelessly gazed at the smoky sky. He was bitter inside, but he managed to force a smile. How many days will I last in such a chaotic situation? Will these thousands of Xian beasts make a corpse out of me? Will this be my end? Baili Luo Yun clearly knew what his family had done to his fate. The Baili family won't rest until Luo Yun dies. This was the comment the Baili family's young master had made to Baili Luo Yun's father when he had broken through to the 9th Xian layer at the age of 10. And Baili Luo Yun had been living in the shadow of these words ever since. I wonder at the irony sometimes. A child with any potential gets full support from their family. And any man can see my talent. So, why does the Baili family treat me in this way? This matter has gone too far. In fact, that man is afraid that I might run away. And so, he threatened me with my father's life if I didn't come south to this place. What did he do that for? And father also dodges this topic whenever I try to talk about it. The only valuable words he has ever spoken to me were, alas. Luo Yun, your wish for revenge is too strong. It's better if you don't meddle in this matter too much. Desire for revenge? When did I ever wish to stir up trouble? Would I have taken any action for the fear of the consequences if those people hadn't crossed their limits? How could a man not resist the intolerable behavior I suffered that day in front of everyone? Or could it be? Is there another reason that I don't know of? I'll return and solve all the mysteries if I'm lucky enough to survive this place. Baili Luo Yun had an indifferent expression of his face as he turned around to enter the tent. They've never attached any importance to me. But then again, when did they ever consider me as family? The sooner I die, the better it is for them, but why isn't it the same for me? It was right then that he saw a youngster approach him. He wasn't familiar with this youngster, but he knew that this youth was called Jun Moxie. He had heard a lot about this youngster. Therefore, he was aware that this youth was a bigger debauchee than his second grandfather and some of the other people in his family. He didn't need to look twice to be sure that Jun Moxie was in fact approaching him. The youngster's path was clear-cut, and there was no variation in it. Moreover, he had a very unusual expression on his face as he looked at Baili Luo Yun. Baili Luo Yun? Jun Moxie tilted his head and sized him up. Jun Moxie? The third young master of the Jun family? Baili Luo Yun's face was indifferent. He felt neither alarm nor happiness upon the realization that this youth had come to look for him. In fact, he didn't even try to guess the reason he was being sought for. Do you wish to find a place to chit-chat? Follow me, Jun Moxie invited. It was technically a request. But the tone of Jun Moxie's voice made it seem like an order of sorts. He had been an aloof assassin in his previous life. So, he knew the methods one must use to deal with such a socially reclusive personality, even though his own nature had changed rather considerably in his present life. One must never hope for such people to take the initiative. Such would keep their mouths shut even if they really wanted to say something. Jun Moxie was well aware of it because he used to be like this once. The only method to deal with such people was to take control of the situation by taking the absolute initiative. the counterpart would then unconsciously move according to one's plan. In fact, they would try to match the rhythm of your movement even if they didn't wish to, even if they were unconvinced, or even if they were unwilling to accept it. This was because they wouldn't wish to seem inferior, and would try to talk to you on equal footing, or they would at least look for an opportunity for equal footing. I don't talk to strangers. Baili Luo Yun indifferently turned his head and started to enter the tent. That very same tent which he loathed from the bottom of his heart. I've heard that you're one of the rarest Xian Qi talents of the present age. So, you wouldn't be afraid of me, right? Jun Moxie stepped forward. Baili Luo Yun's straight and towering figure suddenly came to a stop. The rumors state that you're 26 years old. They also state that you have already reached the peak of the Jade Xian realm. But, you won't dare to talk to me? Are you afraid that I'm plotting something against you? Jun Moxie smiled mischievously. Baili Luo Yun suddenly turned around. His face was still expressionless, and his eyes were still tranquil as he looked at the young Master Jun. It seems that the rumors were mistaken. And it's not surprising, since 9 out of 10 rumors can't be trusted. Jun Moxie turned around to leave. But not before leaving a few words. And I was too bold. I really shouldn't have come here. He started to walk away after he had said that. However, he didn't walk towards his tent. Instead, he walked towards the periphery. The sound of another person's footsteps trailed him. Baili Luo Yun was calmly following after him. He stayed neither too close nor too far. A proud expression flashed in Jun Moxie's eyes. Talk to me, will you? Why aren't you saying anything? Baili Luo Yun would have returned to his tent for a nap if these doubts wouldn't have arisen in his mind. And he certainly wouldn't have followed after Jun Moxie like this. Jun Moxie didn't even turn around the entire time. In fact, his body started to move more rapidly, and the speed of his walk increased to a shocking level. Baili Luo Yun didn't utter a word either. However, he continued to follow Jun Moxie. He didn't come too close, but he didn't lag far behind either. The two outstanding Jade Xian peak youngsters moved one after the other as if they were in a chase. However, no one noticed these talented young men, since everyone's attention was fixed at the discussions that were taking place in the hall. The young Master Jun gradually began to speed up. His movements became increasingly faster. It soon started to seem that he would leave the ground and soar into the sky. And the distance between the two youths began to increase. Baili Luo Yun had always maintained his indifference towards the world. However, his eyes had started to belie his astonishment. This ill-reputed young master is faster than me? But he didn't concede, and started to exert it himself. Yet, he still couldn't catch up with the other party. In fact, he couldn't even reduce the distance between them by an inch. And the distance that separated them continued to increase gradually. I have failed in this contest of speed. Baili Luo Yun wouldn't have admitted it openly. But he had clearly understood that the other person had managed to outstrip him even though he was younger in age. At least in speed, Jun Moxie led the way to a small hidden slope about 5 kilometers away. He quickly climbed it and sat down in a flash. Then, he took the initiative as he padded to the grassy spot beside him and said, "Come sit." There was no answer. Baili Luo Yun stood as straight as a javelin, just like before. He was used to staying alert for long durations of time without giving himself a single moment to relax. This was because everyone in his family was quite eager to kill him whenever they got the chance. Therefore, he had become accustomed to remaining on perpetual guard long ago. However, a trace of admiration had already started to take birth in the depths of his eyes. "What do you want?" Baili Luo Yun finally asked. He was miserly with his words. He seemed to cherish them like they were made of gold. This young man wasn't accustomed to long conversations. He had always held his thoughts close to his heart. Baili Luo Yun had only asked this question because he was led to do so by Jun Moxie's skillful manipulation. He's much younger than me. But his cultivation still doesn't seem to fall short in any way. You've come here to throw your life away, right? Jun Moxie still hadn't turned around. In fact, he hadn't done it even once during their entire journey from the field to this place. The young Master Jun had been very confident that Baili Luo Yun would follow him. And not only would he follow him, he would even try to catch up. This had obviously hit the most uncomfortable spot in Baili Luo Yun's heart. What's that got to do with you? Baili Luo Yun asked in an apathetic manner. This truly has nothing to do with me. In fact, you won't be a threat to my family if you were to die. Jun Moxie smiled and continued. But there's something that I find very strange. Why have you come here if you know you'll die? That's none of your business. Baili Luo Yun said somewhat angrily. This brat is spewing nonsense in front of me. What does he know of the words he speaks? I guess someone threatened you to come here. Right? Jun Moxie muttered. Moreover, they threatened the life of someone you care for the most. Otherwise, why would you come here if you already knew that you will die? You don't seem like a fool from whatever I've seen so far. Baili Luo Yun fell silent. The other person had guessed correctly. Moreover, they had also grasped his nature rather accurately. He hadn't spoken a word, but the opposite party had seen right through him. This was quite surprising for someone as young as his counterpart. You want to be the head of the Baili family. Is that it? Jun Moxie had stuck a half-dried grass stem between his teeth. It seemed like he was speaking to the white clouds above. You are very calm, callous, cruel and daring, and you won't stop at anything. Moreover, your desire for revenge is very strong. And your lust for power is substantially massive as well. You wish to take revenge, but you don't have enough strength for it. You don't have a future at the Baili family. So, you yearn for the greatest power in the family since you can't take your revenge without it. Am I right? Again, what do these things have to do with you? I can't understand what you're trying to say. Baili Luo Yun's voice was impolite, sickened and full of loathing. However, Jun Moxie knew that his words had struck this youngster's heart. Otherwise, such a recluse wouldn't have spoken so many words. Indeed, this has nothing to do with me. But your desires will remain unfulfilled if you remain in the Baili family. Jun Moxie suddenly stood up and turned around. He looked directly into Baili Luo Yun's eyes and stated, however, I will ensure that they become a reality if you join me. You? Baili Luo Yun coldly sized up the opposite party. Why would I do that? The Jun family situation isn't that great either. And the Baili family is one of the great 9 families. So, I too know what's going on with the Jun family. Your family simply can't compare to the Baili family at present. You're mistaken. And my Jun family has nothing to do with you. So, all you need to answer is whether you'll join me or not. Jun Moxie smiled. Let's talk about your situation. You must know that you don't have the slightest bit of hope in the Baili family. You could die 10 times on this expedition for a million different reasons. So, I'm convinced that this is your last chance to avoid death. And perhaps I may be deceiving you, but you have to admit that you'll probably die in the upcoming battle at the Tian Fa forest if you don't grasp this final straw of a chance. In fact, I presume that even your bones will become a sumptuous cuisine for the Xian beasts. Baili Luo Yun silently gazed at Jun Moxie. And Jun Moxie returned that gaze with a smile. It remained like this for some time. Then, the former tilted his head before he finally broke the silence. How does it matter if I live or die? Life and death don't mean much to me. My life in this world hasn't been a happy one. And death would certainly mean freedom. In fact, it would actually mean a much-needed freedom for someone like me. Freedom? But I'm different. If I were to die, I would choose to die after I had taken my revenge, Jun Moxie calmly replied. Revenge. It seemed like there had been a sudden explosion within Baili Luo Yun's eyes. This word had spoken to his heart. So, he turned to look directly at Jun Moxie and said, I have two conditions. I promise to join you after the conclusion of this matter with Tian Fa if you agree to them. First, you must defeat me. You must defeat me with your own strength. I know you're quite strong, but I still need to confirm. After all, I will only join the top talent of this generation. And second, a total of 5 people from the Baili family have come here to the Southern Heaven City, for Sky Xian experts and me. I want the 4 of them to die. I will follow you for 10 years if you fulfill these 2 conditions. And I will leave if you can't ensure the fulfillment of my true desire by the end of those 10 years. However, you won't just have my life at your service if you manage to fulfill them, but also that of the entire Baili family. Jun Moxie heard those 2 conditions. Then, he straightened up and looked at Baili Luo Yun with a faint smile as he backed up a step in order to leave. He didn't even turn his head until he had disappeared out of sight. These conditions are not a problem for me. I can easily deal with you right now. And I can take care of those small fries from the Baili family in a cinch. Couldn't you have come up with more challenging conditions? Boy, wait till I gain control over you. Jun Moxie used his exquisite martial arts and returned to the campsite in secret. However, he was surprised to see that the 20,000 forces had already pitched their tents. They had also started to secure their camp by the time he got there. These camps were inside the city. But they were still set up against the walls. And they had barriers on both their sides. Ditches and traps had been dug, and the archers had been placed in wait for an ambush. Moreover, the guards at the entrances were alert. Each man was doing his duty diligently. The boundary of the camp was regularly being patrolled by crisscrossing platoons. The shifts were divided between 4 teams. 2 teams would simultaneously remain on one duty. One team would take charge, while the other would remain on standby. This ensured a perpetual state of preparedness. This tight command of the forces ensured that no troops would ever have to worry about a sneak attack. And the regular change in shifts ensured that the soldiers got ample rest. It was a pity that they were sent to face the Xian beast uprising. Therefore, these ordinary soldiers had no chance of survival. Jun Moxie had realized this after he had seen the organization of the Xian beasts. These 20,000 people with their soldiers, high-ranking officers, the experts and young masters from various families were merely like flies. They've all been sent here to die. These guys are 100% cannon fodder. Jun Moxie sighed softly before he made his way towards his own encampment. He had barely entered when he felt something unusual in the atmosphere. Guan Qinghan was consoling Dugu Xiao Yi for some reason. The young lady Dugu's beautiful face was tear-stained. It appeared that she had suffered some grievous wrong. What's going on? Boo-hoo, brother Moxie, little white has disappeared. Dugu Xiao Yi looked up at him. Then, She rushed towards him and burst into tears. Oh, so he disappeared when I wasn't here? Jun Moxie smiled bitterly inside. You brought that nuisance here. And now it's gone. The Xian Beast King had issued an order for all Xian beasts to assemble. So, Little White obviously couldn't be an exception to his command. Could he? Little White is still here and that's a real problem. Boo-hoo, no, I must find him, he still hasn't had lunch. Dugu Xiao Yi was distressed and desperate. Little White was the apple of her eye. We will properly look for him, maybe he has gone out to play for a while and will return soon, Jun Moxie consoled her weakly. In the depths of the Tian Fa forest, Long Crane and Big Bear were standing straight in deference. They had two others standing behind them. The level 9 beast kings from every race were present as well. Then, they all squatted down on the ground in a well-behaved manner. The beasts would sweep the floor with their tails from time to time. And they didn't allow a single speck of dust to settle in that small area. The person in front of them was mysteriously shrouded in a black cloak. His hairs, face, body, and legs all were shrouded beneath it. Even his eyes couldn't be seen. Even the make of this person's figure wasn't clear. So, one could forget about his facial features. Tell me, what's all this about? I go off to seclusion for only 2 years. And you create such a big mess? You have such courage now that all the great experts have assembled. Ha, the mysterious person spoke up. He was actually the lord of the Tian Fa forest. The same person who had earlier spoken to Li Ju Tian. Eldest brother, this, Big Bear and Long Crane gave a cry, and then looked at each other. They then became speechless. Over 3 million of our people had rushed out of Tian Fa, and these people were all level 6 or above. The full strength of our Tian Fa has been laid bare. The shrouded person sneered. Does that merely Ju Tian really require such a large assembly of force to be dealt with? Eldest brother. Things aren't that straight with this matter, Long Crane spoke then. He smacked his lips and swallowed the words he was about to say. What's going on? The person shrouded in black suddenly released his chi in an unrestrained manner. I want to know the full story. Tell me. Fourth brother Bear. Me, Big Bear trembled as he replied in a stutter. The silhouette of a person flashed. And Big Bear howled in pain. Then, his body was sent rolling like a ball. A burst of noise was produced as he rolled for a distance. His arms tried to hug 3 different trees to stop his momentum, and all 3 of those trees snapped before he finally came to a stop. Come back. Big Bear supported his lower back with one hand when he heard those words. He then grimaced, ran back, and stationed himself in an obedient stance. Speak. Then, Big Bear pulled a pained face as he recalled how they had stolen the level 9 Xian Beast Core in the Tianxiang city. He told everything in detail about what came to happen after he and Long Crane had stolen that core. You're telling me that this person can make it easier for us to advance? Are you sure about this? The Xian Beast King also started to tremble. His shroud rippled with him. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 333. Tian Fa's Fury. Yes. Long Crane answered confidently. Then, he continued. I'm absolutely convinced of this. He used his chi technique on the 4th brother and me. His special method resulted in the strength in our bodies to increase by 10 times. And even the bottleneck that had been constraining us started to loosen. Therefore, we acted like this since he would help in our advancement. I can assure you that all this is true. So, you needn't have any doubts. Long Crane answered solemnly. So that's how it is, the shrouded person mumbled in a faint voice. It's understandable if that's the case. But why didn't you and Fourth try to capture him? You could have been done with everything if you were to control him. It may be assumed that this person's strength is high. But he won't be able to contend with Li Ju Tian. How many experts of such strength do you think exist in this society? You and Fourth wouldn't be considered weaker than Li Ju Tian if you were to combine your attacks. Therefore, the two of you should have at least attempted to capture the man in question. Long Crane smiled bitterly. You think we didn't wish to, elder brother? We had proposed a competition with this very thought in our mind. However, you don't know how much he pressurized us. The pressure of his aura was even greater than yours, elder brother. Moreover, we will have the means to promote our strengths if things go well. In fact, we will have never-ending advancements after this matter ends. And we can bid goodbye to the word bottleneck. Fourth and I were forced to step down with grace after the third match ended since we were no match for the opposite party. You don't understand the temptation this matter posed for us. Fourth and I have been stuck at our levels for 40 years. We haven't seen second brother for many years. But we can't be sure if he has made advancement either. He must have remained stuck as well. Plus, that man's conditions didn't seem very difficult. We only had to stop the Shui Han manor from going north. And we had to beat up Li Ju Tian's son to a state where he'd have to remain bedridden for a couple of months. How difficult could it really be? Therefore, Fourth and I decided to act without consulting you. Indeed, this is reasonable and not very difficult. We can take advantage of this. But why has everything turned out like this? We've got over half of the world's Xian experts assembled at our gates. The shrouded person tilted his body slightly sideways. I had originally planned to light a fire at the Shui Han manor in the cover of darkness. I had planned to use that chaos as a cover to attack Li Tingyun in order to break his legs. But then Big Bear suddenly burst into the Shui Han manor in bright daylight and created a clamor. Then, he began to howl about breaking Li Tingyun's legs, and arrogantly declared to the opposite party that they must take the initiative and break Li Tingyun's legs on their own. Even I wouldn't have been to do so. Forget about Li Ju Tian doing such a thing. Third brother Crane, why did you sell me out? Did I not intend to finish the matter quickly? And how much delay would we have seen if we followed your plan? Moreover, such a sneaky method isn't gratifying. Does it matter how we complete the task as long as we do it? Big Bear's face reddened as he shouted. He hadn't finished speaking yet, but he had started to tremble all over. He didn't dare to utter a single word thereafter. It's needless to say that the Shui Han manor didn't comply with Big Bear's threat. So, we attacked them very resolutely on the same day. We had a significant advantage. So, we managed to injure several people. But Li Tingyun remained hidden. So, we returned the next day to do the same. But we then found out that the great master Shi Chang Xiao had suddenly appeared at the Shui Han manor. And it was naturally a bit difficult to maintain our advantage once he was there. So, this continued for a few days. However, it still wasn't a problem because the Shui Han manor was more or less destroyed even if Li Tingyun hadn't yet showed his face. But then, we found out that Li Ju Tian, that dog, had also returned to the Shui Han manor out of the blue. Long Crane squirmed and pursed his lips. You go someone's doorstep and cause trouble. And then, you ask them to hand over their young master so you can break his legs? And then you're surprised that they didn't cooperate? Then, you use your logic and you get angry, so you go on a rampage. Then, Li Ju Tian comes and gets infuriated when he looks at his big Shui Han manor. The work of his lifetime's blood and sweat has almost ceased to exist. Which family would endure to be ashamed by this? The man shrouded in black sneered. Do you two really think nothing of the people in this world? This is hilarious. First you didn't complete this task in secrecy. Then, you actually went about it so boldly in broad daylight and, Big Bear, you really have some big guts. I genuinely wish to tear up open so I can see just how big your guts are. Big Bear stared gaping. Then, he hiccuped and shut his mouth. What happened after that? The black-cloaked man asked. After that we attacked again. Then, I found out that Li Ju Tian's body had an extremely fluctuating Xian beast core inside it. It seemed that he had taken a core which was at least at the 9th level. In fact, the chi was similar to that of the Panther Kings. But it didn't seem like it was moving to separate away from his body. So, I immediately started to feel suspicious. Long Crane's face flared up with anger. The Panther King had disappeared 2 years ago. Big Bear and I had searched for him for a long time, but we couldn't find a single clue. Then, there was the case of the level 9 Xian core in the Tianxiang city. So, we didn't think much on our search for a little time. But then, we came here to stir trouble on orders from that mysterious person only to find that Li Ju Tian's body possessed the fluctuating energy of the Xian Panther King's core. The Panther King, he shrouded man's voice tensed up. Was it genuinely the Panther King? What the hell is going on? Are you sure about what you said? Then, his voice became very cold. I was just thinking that I haven't even seen the shadow of the Panther King. So, it seems that someone has killed and consumed him. Even his core has become a part of someone's energy. Third brother. Fourth brother, the two of you have managed Tian Fa very well in my absence. Panther King is dead. Talk about mysterious disappearances. Good. The complexion on Long Crane and Big Bear's faces suddenly changed. They immediately knelt with a bang, and their foreheads were sweaty enough to resemble a broth. Their elder brother's intermittent words and manner of speech was enough to express his rage. It seemed that these two brothers were in for a tragedy. There used to be 10 beast kings at the time of our king. They could overlook the entire world with arrogance. Even the 3 holy lands didn't have the courage to look them in the eye. The Tian Fa was the fiercest force in the entire universe. It was a scene to remember. However, the king then ascended to the heavens. And the 9 elder brothers became disheartened and went away to live in seclusion. This allowed us to rise and advance, and new beast kings were born in less than a century's time, and a total of 12 at that. So I thought that this would at least be enough for us to retain our position even if we weren't able to build on it. But so much has happened in this brief period. The second brother Eagle King had been cheated by Yun Bichen in a gamble. He was then forced to become that old man's mount. This has become a cause of great shame for our Tian Fa. The youngest brother hasn't appeared for a long time. The 6th brother Lion King and the 7th brother Monkey King had fought with the Great 8 Masters 60 years ago. They lost that battle. The nothing has ever been the same in these past 60 years. His voice was desolate. The 2 Xian beast kings, the White Lion King and the golden-haired Monkey King, were standing behind Big Bear. They hung their heads sadly. These were the 2 Xian beast kings he had spoken about. The 5th used to manage Tian Fa until 30 years ago, but then 9 unknown and powerful spirit Xian experts besieged and killed our brother King Beast. Even the location of his core is unknown. That entire matter is still shrouded in endless mystery. Then, the 11th Panther King died. And his core is inside Li Ju Tian's belly. Now only a few of us are left out of the original 12 kings: crane, bear, snake, tiger, and eagle. The shrouded man tried hard to restrain his voice as he got angrier. This is Tian Fa, right? Tian Fa is fierce, right? Couldn't you 7 beast kings have gone together as brothers to wreak havoc on that insignificant Shui Hun manor? Ha! He dispersed qi around. And his qi went away from his body like a bomb that has just exploded. But the surrounding beast kings didn't resist one bit. They didn't dare to resist, and were sent flying out by the explosion. In fact, the center of the forest was blown clear for around 90 kilometers with that blast. The trees were snapped clean from the ground. And the air was full of wood shavings. That huge area on the ground was completely barren now. Not a blade of grass could be seen growing on it. The power of the angered lord of Tian Fa had unexpectedly reached such heights. Eldest brother, you can't be so angry at such a critical time. The 7 Xian beast kings knelt and implored their lord. One could have caught a glimpse of the black-cloaked person from underneath his shroud as he raised his head to the moon and sighed. Snake King, Tiger King, Eagle King, you 3 are at peak level, the shrouded person asked. He had apparently calmed down. A golden-clothed man, a black-clothed man, and a green-garbed young lady bowed in unison. Yes. These 3 were also in attendance beside Long Crane and Big Bear. However, these 3 were in their human forms. The White Lion King and the Golden Monkey King were also present there. However, they had a mixture of admiration and indignation in their eyes. These 2 had reached that level and form 60 years ago. But they had been reduced to their original forms due to the fight that had happened 60 years ago. And no amount of bitter cultivation had helped them regain their peak form. It's finally time for the breakthrough. But where on earth will we find so many of the Tian Fa's sacred fruits? The person shrouded in black sighed. Everyone around him became silent, and the forest became still. There's no going back now that the war has started. Now, the direr the situation, the better it is for us. I wish to reinstate Tian Fa's place to the foremost in the universe. The 3 hold lands may not acknowledge that. But I at least wish to ensure that Li Ju Tian and Yunbi Chen don't just dare to stroll into Tian Fa whenever they please. Tian Fa's prestige will be re-established in this war, the black-cloaked person stated in a grave manner. But you all must know the consequences if we were to lose this war. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 334. To have the heart of a bear and the guts of a panther. Tian Fa's power is incomparable. Tian Fa's power is the fiercest in the entire universe. Long Crane shouted as he waved his arm. White Lion King and Golden Monkey King stood behind him. They also looked towards the sky and roared as they let out their thoughts in their own manner. Tian Fa won't invade the lands on the interior since we don't wish to trouble the common people. This has always been our custom, and we won't break it. Big Bear, you will command the ground forces with Tiger King, Lion King, Monkey King, and Snake King. And you will attack the resistance in the southern Heaven City. Long Crane, you will lead the aerial forces with Eagle King, and be ready to coordinate at any time. We hit them first. We hit them fast. And we hit them hard. They will be badly hurt. Then, we will decide if we should go ahead with a full-scale battle. But the final decision will always be to allow them come to me. Do you understand? Yes, the 2 men replied in unison. 4th brother. How's your injury? The shrouded person inquired. It's fine. It was healed when eldest brother transferred his efficacy. Big Bear replied gratefully. That elusive heart and vein-splitting sword attack might have killed me if it weren't for eldest brother. Eldest brother. There's one more thing. I think that Big Bear has been Li Ju Tian's main target this entire time. Long Crane spoke up in a cautionary manner. Oh. And why is that? Li Ju Tian isn't an unwise man. He must know that brazenly killing the fourth would tantamount to a never-ending enmity and hatred from this lord of Tianfa. Yet, he still dares to. The shrouded person snorted. Long Crane replied in a dispirited manner. Or maybe it's because the others don't know what we do. The world uses the so-called phrase, to have the heart of a bear, and the guts of a panther, to describe the might of a person's courage. We know that such is not the case, but maybe Li Ju Tian had brazenly killed the Panther King and taken his core with that mindset, and so he wants to take Big Bear Heart as well? The shrouded man snorted in rage. Yes. A man's cultivation increases considerably if he takes a Xian core. But one can't absorb it properly, and Li Ju Tian would have faced this problem as well. But if he takes Big Bear's heart along with Panther King's, he wouldn't only be able to absorb the Xian core, but his Xian cultivation would also double. And his strength would double up again if he were to ingest Big Bear's core as well. This would lead to fourfold increase in his present efficacy. And who in this world would be able to rival Li Ju Tian if that were to happen? So, why would he consider the enmity from the Tianfa in the lure of such strength? Long Crane's face was full of loathing. Li Ju Tian ignored me throughout the fight. And he continued to target Big Bear. And each of his attacks was meant to kill. So, his intention was clearly malicious. This was the main reason why Fourth Brother and I instigated this uprising. Li Ju Tian. The shrouded person trembled with anger. It seemed like he had forced those words from the space between his teeth. No wonder he surrendered his pride and issued the supreme summon. No wonder he didn't hesitate to use that elusive heart and vein-splitting sword attack to kill the fourth. He had intended to kill him with one strike. That man intends to use the strength of the half of the continent's Xian experts to achieve his ill-intended and malicious ambitions. But he has counted his chickens before they've hatched by using that attack. You all must leave for now, and prepare for the attacks. Send the beasts of level 7 or below to the Tianfa forest. We won't use them for now. I will put them on a single-minded training schedule for now. The individual gowned in a black robe continued. Green Hunter Snake King, your speed is comparatively slower. So, pay attention. Only level 5 and above flying thread snakes, golden centipede and 7-star snakes shall participate. The others don't need to get involved for now. He was talking about flying thread, golden centipede and 7-star snakes. These three were the fastest, the most poisonous, and the most ferocious snakes in all of Tianfa. In fact, these snakes were so quick that an average person couldn't even track their shadows. The green-clad young lady, the Snake King, bowed respectfully and acknowledged the order. Third and fourth, you had said that this mysterious man was very strong. That he might even be more powerful than me. How would you judge his cultivation compared to mine? And, be honest, the shrouded person's voice was somewhat hoarse. That man's cultivation is very high. I figure it wouldn't be less than yours. His cultivation would be more or less at par with you. Long Crane replied in a careful manner after he had considered it for a while. However, Big Bear's head was perhaps stuffed with melon seeds. So, he didn't understand the meaning behind Long Crane's roundabout reply. And he opened his big mouth and spoke. Third brother, you need to open your eyes before you speak such blind nonsense. That person's cultivation was profound mystery. Eldest brother is indeed very strong, but let's be honest, he could easily beat up several people like you to dust. In fact, I think that he could easily destroy two such people with ease. Dang it, I didn't mean that, I didn't say that, dang it, you're the strongest, there is eldest brother, dang it, I didn't mean that, dang it, I was just saying that the eldest brother could easily beat up 10 people like him, dang it, lung-splitting screams were heard soon after. He hadn't finished speaking when his entire body had started to tremble. He had then opened his eyes and had returned to his senses. But it was already too late. Bang! His entire body was hurled upside down into the ground under the shrouded person's leg. Soon, only a faint snapping sound could be heard. And this was because he had hit a few subterranean tree roots and had broken them. So, from your words, I can gather that this man's strength is much stronger than mine. Is that what you mean? There's no need to mince your words. Speak in a straightforward manner. And don't waste my time. The shrouded man sounded somewhat gloomy as he nonchalantly clapped his hands and moved his leg. One could see the two soles of Big Bear's legs jutting out of the spot in the ground where he had been hurled into. And the fading sounds of Big Bear's painful groans could also be heard. Even the three holy lands and those reckless old men outside it can't match my cultivation. So what's the deal with this man? How can he have such high cultivation? The shrouded man moved his legs to and fro for a while. He was somewhat perplexed. And a mournful groan was heard every time his steps fell on the ground. This man's origin is quite mysterious. And his strength is profound. But I can assure you that he's in no way a mediator from the three holy lands. Long Crane replied solemnly. His back was as straight as a ramrod. And his expression was also very serious. He had learned from the mistake Big Bear had just made, and had deliberated every word of his speech. He had done this since he feared that the same thing might happen to him. How can you be sure? The shrouded person continued to move his feet up and down. But his movements didn't even raise the dust. The power of his feet was being transferred to the ground. But the pitiful Big Bear wasn't injured or in pain because of this, only his head continued to get pushed deeper into the ground because of this stomping. Big Bear's skin was rough. So he wouldn't have gotten hurt anyway. He continued to stomp till his feet stepped on empty space. The shrouded man was satisfied only when the whole of Big Bear's body had gone into the second layer of soil underneath. Eldest brother, you know that those old men from the three holy lands have a despicable aura? And it's something which we can easily sense. Well, this man's aura isn't only despicable, but it's also quite a delight. I don't know why, but it also makes one wish to get friendlier with him. So I clearly understand that this merely your intuition. The person shrouded in black cut him off with a wave of his hand. Intuition? Long Crane's expression was unusual as he looked on. Then, he secretly mumbled a few words to himself. What are you looking at? What are you thinking? Is my analysis wrong? The shrouded man asked fiercely as he let his aura loose in anger. He then used his formless aura to bind Long Crane in a tight grip. You genuinely deserve to be the eldest brother. Eldest brother is the wisest, haha. Long Crane was extremely scared. He hurriedly spoke those words and forced a laugh before his throat started to make those choking noises. Long Crane, you're quite skillful. Third brother, the shrouded man said in a gloomy tone. Eldest brother, spare me. Long Crane begged for mercy. But he was flung away. He then landed on the ground, and his crash created a deep trench. Then, suddenly a little bit of dirt was thrown up, and a huge hole appeared on the ground beside him. And Big Bear appeared out of it. He was covered in yellow mud. But he became extremely cheerful at the sight of Long Crane's misery. He quickly spat out some mud and spoke in a merry tone. Third brother Crane, you too got your share. Ha ha ha. Long Crane's head was covered in mud. He crawled 20 to 25 meters before he snorted and replied, "At least I don't look like someone who was smashed headfirst into the ground and had then gone over 10 meters underground. Your body looks like it is covered in manure and you still look pleased with yourself. Your face is covered with that manure. In fact, you had even spat some of it out a moment ago." Big Bear couldn't speak anymore. He knew that his third brother was disgusted with the stench that was coming from his body, but he himself had started to feel nauseated by it now. "I would like to meet this mysterious man if I have time. Then, we'll see who's stronger and who's weaker," the shrouded man stated in an ice-cold voice as the other two's quarrel started to die out. "It's a pity that it's been over a month since we made that agreement. The job wasn't that difficult, but we've crossed the time limit. That old bastardly Jew Tian has ruined things." Big Bear angrily stamped his feet. And the mud that had stuck onto his body started to come off. "However, that man had also said that we have to look for Jun family's Jun Wuyi after we finish the job." Long Crane suddenly thought and said, "So, we can't and mustn't let him escape since he has said so. We'll find him if we continue to follow our actions. And as far as we know, the Empire has sent him in as the commander of the forces that were dispatched to deal with this uprising. Therefore, he's inside the southern Heaven City at the moment. We will plan cautiously and look for Jun Wuyi if that's the case. And we will use him to get information about this mysterious man in a very discreet manner." The shrouded man's robe fluttered as the tone of his voice changed a bit. Long Crane and Big Bear didn't find anything fishy about it. They were already quite used to strange things. "Eldest brother, we must still be careful regarding this matter with Jun Wuyi. We might anger the mysterious man if we cross a certain line. And the losses will outweigh the gain in such a case," Long Crane suggested in a caution manner. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 335. Tian Fa is shocked. "That is only natural," the black-clad person said. "Since this man can help you advance, how can I act rashly when this man is so important to us? Do you need to remind me of something so trivial?" "You have spoken very wisely, eldest brother." Long Crane and Big Bear nodded. They were quite embarrassed. They had previously boasted a lot, but the deadline of 1 month to complete their task had already passed. And this fact had left them to feel very ashamed of themselves. "What should I say in case I end up facing him again?" The task of preventing the Shui Han Manor from going north had been completed very effectively. Moreover, even the Silver Blizzard City had been forced to come south to deal with this matter. However, there was the other task to break Li Tengyun's legs. And this task hadn't been completed yet. In fact, even Li Tengyun's face hadn't appeared in the midst of this chaos. This had confused everyone, and had lit a fire inside Long Crane and Big Bear. However, they most probably wouldn't stop at breaking his legs if they came face to face with him. In fact, they might even finish him. Li Tengyun wouldn't only die if this were to happen, he would die a miserable death after suffering unspeakable pain. They had previously been wary of Li Tian. Therefore, they hadn't dared to consider the thought of killing the boy, since that would create a mess which could never be cleaned up. But then, Li Tian had deliberated to kill their fourth brother. And this had removed any space for the two sides to mediate. Therefore, these two Xian beast kings were now ferociously stirred. So, how could they let Li Tengyun off so easily? In fact, they were eager waiting to confront Li Tian again. And they were looking forward to using this opportunity to crack down that old bastard. The three individuals glanced at each other. and inferred that no other matter was left to debate upon. Therefore, they figured that it was time to go their separate ways and start their respective preparations. Then, a clamor suddenly rose in the distance. Big Bear frowned and spoke up. "That's the Panther group over there. They seem to have some trouble again. These folks will never leave me in peace." The Panther group? The other two individuals also frowned and looked into the distance. Two vigorous figures were quickly making their way towards them. These two figures were snow-white in color. But their eyes flashed with a golden light. They both were 8th level peak golden-eyed Xian snow panthers. They were extremely fast and managed to arrive at the spot in an instant. "What's the matter?" Big Bear felt humiliated. He had been responsible for the Panthers ever since the death of their king. And he had just witnessed two of them rush in without any semblance of discipline. So, he couldn't help but feel angry. The two golden-eyed Xian snow panthers whined a bit. They then prostrated themselves on the ground and remained motionless for a bit. Then, one turned his head and retrieved a small white creature holding the scruff of its neck in his mouth from his back. He put the creature on the ground. However, it seemed as if the panther still couldn't control the trembles that had overtaken its body. The two panthers prostrated even lower, and their heads dropped further as they whined a bit more. Then, they quickly withdrew and vanished into the forest. "This is just a small iron-winged panther cub. It looks like it's barely over a month old. It's such an adorable little thing." The man shrouded in black had barely spoken these words when his entire body started to shiver in shock. Then, his body suddenly became extremely stiff. Long Crane and Big Bear also became still at the same time. In fact, their eyes almost popped out as they stared unwaveringly at the thing that was huddled on the ground. It seemed as if they were looking at a rare treasure of their era. That little creature was Little White. Little White had heard the summons of the Lord of Tian and had recklessly rushed towards the forest. This was his hidden and innate nature. So, he could have never gone against it. He had only wished to pay his obeisance to the Lord of Tian and then return. But he had barely gotten to the Panther group, and they noticed that something was wrong. So, they delivered him here. Then, he came to see the three Xian beast kings so close to himself, and his natural instinct as a lower-leveled Xian beast kicked in. Therefore, the adorable little thing huddled and started to tremble. "Eldest brother. Eldest brother. This one is just a child. Yet, he's an unweaned level 8 iron-winged panther. Level 8. Level 8. F***ck me. How's this possible? I must be dreaming, damn it. Third brother. Quickly slap me. I must be dreaming. This is unbelievable. My holy uncle. This is really awe." Big Bear was shouting and making a commotion. In fact, he had completely neglected how he'd appear while doing so. Long Crane's face had a hint of darkness on it. Everyone else was completely silent. In fact, it was almost a deathly silence. The 6 pairs of eyes of the 3 Xian beast kings were opened round. Long Crane's lamp-like eyes were flickering like a light bulb. Big Bear's eyes were still full of disbelief. In fact, it seemed that they were just about to pop out from their sockets. The shrouded person's eyes were covered by the black cloth. But his sharp eyes had started to shine through it and had begun to glisten. Moreover, Big Bear's words were quite deplorable, and the Lord of Tian would have gotten angry a long time ago under any other circumstances. But even he didn't utter a single word at this moment. "This is very shocking. It's unbelievably shocking." The Lord of the Xian beasts bent down. Then, He nimbly and cautiously grabbed the little creature and held him to his bosom like a cherished treasure that was rather brittle in make. Little White was terrified. So, he rolled his eyes as he whimpered in fear. He could sense the opposite party's kindness, but still couldn't dare to move. The Lord of Tian Fa held Little White's soft body in his palm. Then, he exhaled after a long time and said, "This little thing is genuinely at the 8th level. He's unexpectedly at level 8. Genuinely at level 8. This is a miracle. A genuine miracle." These 3 Xian beast kings could easily determine the level, rank, and strength of a newly met Xian beast as long as they concentrated. This was a benefit of the highest of their level. However, the Lord of Tian Fa had personally and closely inspected this unprecedented little Xian beast with his own hands. Perhaps it was the shock that had caused the Lord of Tian Fa's speech to be slightly odd at first. However, his speech had turned a shade of surety once that initial sense of astonishment came to pass. But his speech had become slightly incoherent soon after. However, the other 2 Xian beast kings Long Crane and Big Bear didn't think that his words were strange. They became quite dignified on the contrary, and surveyed the little creature properly. Then, their mouths fell wide open, and they became speechless. They could still feel that sense of shock in their hearts. They shouldn't have been this shocked under normal circumstances since their perception abilities had assessed the level of this little creature a long time ago. Moreover, this sense of shock should have been removed from their psyche once they had verified this fact. However, they had remained stunned to their very core even now. And the cause for their astonishment wasn't baseless either. This fact was too unfathomable and extremely shocking. The iron-winged panthers usually live for around 200 years. They start their advance in 10 years, and start their progress to the 7th layer's basic level. And it takes about 70 years for them to reach the 7th Xian level's peak. And the promising ones break through the 7th Xian level if they reach its peak within those 70 years. Then, they reach the 8th level. But that's the limit of the levels they can achieve. They have no choice but to stop there. The black-shrouded person spoke these strange words with a sense of urgency in his tone. However, his voice was somewhat sharp and somewhat intermittently gloomy as well. This information wasn't very valuable under the usual pretext. Forget these 3 Xian beast kings, even regular Xian beasts would find it common knowledge. However, this long-standing common knowledge had been completely and thoroughly toppled. However, we have a level 8 iron-winged panther cub in front of us. A mere cub, the black-shrouded man spoke with a sense of urgency, and then panted a little. His robe fluttered and swept about. He had seemingly let go of the entirety of his repressed emotions in that moment. Third, fourth, is it possible that we are dreaming? How's this thing even possible? The black-cloaked man trembled. From what we can infer, this is an iron-winged panther's cub. It is barely a few months old, and it hasn't even been weaned yet. But he has still advanced under these conditions, and not only that, he has advanced to such a high level. This is unbelievable. Unfathomable. I would have killed anyone who had told me that such a thing had happened, but I wouldn't have believed a word of it. But now I see this thing right in front of us. Can anyone tell me how such a thing is possible? The Lord of the Xian beasts shook his head again. In fact, he had exerted the entirety of his strength to shake his head. Then, he rashly spun around twice, and looked at the little white creature again. Then, his gaze didn't move away again. This fact was genuinely incomprehensible. It was extremely strange. So strange that the cloaked man couldn't understand it. Long Crane and Big Bear stood astonished besides the Lord of the Xian beasts. Their minds had become numb. and saliva had started to drip from their gaping mouths without them even being aware of it. Then, Big Bear's majestic body suddenly started to sway after a long time, and he tumbled onto the ground. He then started to howl. He clutched the hair on his head and pounded the ground before mournfully shouted, "Good gods! This world is genuinely crazy. Could it be?" Long Crane thought of a possibility and smacked his lips. "Elder brother, is it possible that the Panther King had our asterisk pet a level 7 iron-winged panther?" He spoke those words, but then he abruptly came to a stop and slapped himself. The other two, including Big Bear, looked at him as if he was an idiot. "Idiot? How's that possible? You two act like you have garbage inside your head. Do you think I'm amazed at its level alone? The astonishing facts about this little thing aren't limited his strength alone." The Lord of the Xian beasts then paused a moment and said, "I've inspected it very carefully. This little thing's genes are purely those of an iron-winged panther and no other high-level Xian beasts. Therefore, I can confirm that this little thing's advancement is entirely acquired in its nature. In other words, someone has used a strong and miraculous method to promote its advancement. And this is still not as surprising. What is really surprising is that this little thing's innate characteristics have been completely transformed as well. So, it will surely advance to the 9th level within 30 years, and even the 9th level won't be the limit of its potential achievements." The man shrouded in black finished speaking in a solemn manner. Then, he recalled what Long Crane had spoken a moment ago. And he let his leg fly. He kicked Long Crane before he started to scold him. "Would you, a majestic Xian Crane Beast King, be ready to our asterisk PE a level 7 Xian Crane Beast? What does that pointy head of yours think the entire day? Can't you think of something decent and useful for once?" His voice contained a destitute trace of embarrassment in it. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 336. Tian Fei's decision. Big Bear was on the ground because of the shock. Then, he looked up and started to laugh since he couldn't help but take pleasure in Long Crane's misery. This was right before he suddenly shouted, "Eldest brother, look. This little thing has a jade tied to his neck. This means it's someone's pet, and doesn't it mean ugh?" It was obvious from his cold hiss that he had been shaken. "A pet?" The black-clad man didn't ignore that comment. He turned the little creature around and noticed that white piece of jade. It was a translucent white in color, much like the little one's fur. So, one wouldn't have noticed it if they weren't looking carefully. In fact, Big Bear wouldn't have been able to notice it if he weren't lying on the ground and hadn't noticed the reflection of light that had denoted the difference between the fur and the jade. Tianxiang City Dugu, the shrouded man read these words softly. Then, he suddenly looked up and started to ponder. It was a while before he finally spoke up. "Again, that Tianxiang City. It seems that we must head over to this Tianxiang City. This little one managed to advance there in a miraculous manner. And this matter addresses our issue as well. This little thing was able to advance despite its frail body. Moreover, there's still a lot of room for its growth. Plus, it doesn't seem that it has suffered from any side effects. This miraculous technique is genuinely world-shaking." Big Bear suddenly recalled something. Then, he started to crawl towards Little White and stopped right in front of him. He then opened his big mouth, made a whining noise, and bared his white teeth. Little White's eyes shone. It raised its tiny claws and made a gesture. Then, it opened its mouth and whined feebly. The black-cloaked man kicked Big Bear's posterior. "I forgot that you could talk to it. Why didn't you do it earlier, you fool?" Big Bear rubbed his buttocks as he inwardly cursed. You had forgotten about it too. Then, why did you do this to me? But he didn't dare to open his mouth. He whined for a bit, and then he started to make strange monosyllabic sounds. Oh, 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 repeatedly. Little White's big eyes blinked in excitement. His two paws moved up and down. He made a chirping, oh, 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 sound as well. The opposite party is a bear. And I'm a panther, but we can still speak to each other. Isn't this great? Big Bear inquired more urgently thereafter. Little White tilted his head and looked at the opposite party innocently. Then, he whined a bit. He wanted to give an explanation, but he wasn't able to come up with one, and his eyes were clearly relaying the confusion of his mind. So, he eventually gave up and hung his head in a dispirited manner. The little creature stared blankly as his ears also drooped down, and he made no further noises. Big Bear spread his hands to indicate that he was finished with asking his questions. The man shrouded in black and long crane asked in one voice, "What?" "Oh. Oh. A whoop." Big Bear had forgotten to switch back to the proper disposition, and had continued to speak in that monosyllabic language. It was then that he experienced a punch to his chest and a kick to his posterior. So, he shouted, and started to rub the parts where he had been hit. "Hurry up and speak, you idiot." The faces of the other two individuals had transformed to devilish masks. And Little White had been frightened. So, he withdrew his head, turned, and moved towards the black-cloaked person's bosom. This little creature was quite young. But he looked up meaningfully and realized that the black-shrouded person was the leader amongst the three. Therefore, he knew that he'd be the safest person to be with. So, Little White suddenly whined in doubt, opened his huge wet eyes, spun around twice, cupped his paws in respect, and then stretched his tiny soft tongue to lick the black-shrouded person. The black-shrouded man flicked his hand like he had just received an electric shock. And Little White cut a sorry figure as he dropped down to the ground. "This little thing," the black-shrouded person uttered with regret and anger. Then, he rolled up his long sleeves and picked Little White, and held him to his bosom again. After that, he started to pat his head. "Is too naive," he spoke in a strict manner. Little White was terrified to look at him. So, he just lay prone, without making any movements. It said that a powerful, very powerful and nice, very nice man helped him. Big Bear panted angrily as he replied in his coarse voice. His eyes were opened round, and his expression was quite gloomy. I asked him how this man looks, and this thing replied, "Good. Very good." I asked him about that man's age, and he said, "Good. Very good." Everything was good. Very good. Big Bear continued gloomily. In fact, his voice was almost a hiss. "There isn't a single detail in that. How exactly did you communicate, you idiot?" The individual in black had gotten a little anxious by now. There was only one other answer outside, "Very good." It said that the man's smell was also very good. In fact, he said that it was better than that of its master. Big Bear continued. He was feeling very gloomy since everything had turned into a mess for him. Be content. This little one is merely a couple of months old. So, it's a great feat that he was able to communicate this much. What did you expect from such a young one? But we have at least confirmed that this person who can advance Xian beasts cultivation exists. Long Crane had a disdainful look on his face. He turned to the black-clad person. "Eldest brother, I think that this thing is related to that mysterious black-clothed masked man. In fact, I'm certain that it's related to him. There's no one else in the outside world excluding that man who could have done this. Moreover, this little one has a master. So, its master and the person who promoted his cultivation must be very close. He wouldn't use this unnatural method if not for a close friend. How could that man use such a method lightly? Yes. Brother Crane's assessment seems reasonable. Why don't you learn something from him, Brother Bear? So, speaking of the mysterious and skillful man's current location, it's quite possible that he's here as well. Anyway, we know that this little one's master is here to say the least. The black-cloaked man's eyes had started to shine brightly. He took 2 steps and gave a resolute order. Execute the plan that was decided earlier. But don't rush at the Jun and the Donghua family's men. He then sighed. Eldest brother, if we reach the climax of the decisive battle, won't it? Long Crane and Big Bear looked at him anxiously. You're at the fringes of the earth level. If it had an effect, wouldn't it be? It doesn't matter. The black-shrouded person waved his sleeves and said, this is a battle for prestige. And we will have at least 10 years of stability if we win this war. But the real disaster would be upon us if we timidly decide to abstain from a fight. I will return to seclusion and assail the 12th gate once this matter ends. Then, you too can govern Tian Fa at that time. Yes, the other 2 acknowledged in unison. The southern heaven city seemed to be riddled with confusion at that point of time. And everyone seemed to be anxious. That assembly of half of the world's experts was no longer confident of their victory after they had witnessed the terrifyingly formidable lineup of the Xian beasts. The great families and powerful factions had sent their men. Moreover, hundreds of Sky Xian experts were present. And there were at least 40 to 50 Spirit Xian experts present here as well. They had been brimming with confidence and had been rearing to go to battle, but that was before the Xian beasts had demonstrated their strength. In fact, some of them had even looked forward to exploit this battle, since they had hoped to harvest several Xian cores from Xian beasts by the end of the battle. This is going to get us a lot of wealth. However, those wonderful thoughts had vanished once they had come to witness the Xian beasts' show of strength. A level 8 Xian beasts equals a Sky Xian expert, and level 9 Xian beasts equals a Spirit Xian expert. With that algorithm in place, Tian Fa's strength far exceeded their own. They had forgotten about the others, and had only seen the level 9 Xian beasts. And they alone numbered no less than 100. And the level 8 Xian beasts must be tens of thousands in number. How can we possibly fight this battle? How can we do it? Still thinking about collecting Xian beast cores? You must be dreaming. Moreover, there was the myth that a Xian beast king could equal the great masters. However, there were only 5 of them present at this battlefront, that is if Feng Wanyun was included in that count. And what was even more unreasonable was the fact that the strength of Tian Fa's lord was unrivaled. Therefore, the great masterly Zhu Tian was at a grave disadvantage on the present day at least. The leaders of every powerful faction had been immersed in discussions the entire day, but they hadn't taken a single countermeasure until now. If one came up with a plan, someone else refuted it. If one proposed a tactic, another overruled it. However, it was surprising that there wasn't any internal strife due to this behavior. Moreover, there were many who inwardly desired to retreat after having seen the Xian beast's strength and lineups. Young Master Jun wasn't at peace either. It could be said that the day been a very tiring one for him. First, he had expended a lot of energy in the matter relating to persuading Baili Luo Yun. He had been mentally and physically tired by that encounter, but he had thought that he would rest once he'd returned to his tent. However, he arrived in his tent and found out that Little White had gone missing. So, he had no choice but to try and cajole Dugu Xiaoyi. And that too to no avail. The young Master Jun had started to feel very tired and stuck since he hadn't been able to make headway. And the little girl had continued to cry that she had to go and look for Little White. This made the young Master Jun very restless. So he eventually roared that he would tie her up like rice dumplings and would send her back to Tianxiang City. This immediately quieted the young lady Dugu down. But she was left to fume with anger. It was almost as if she would look for a day and opportunity to get back at him. Guan Qinghan started to console her as she shot a quick and cold glance at the debauchee at her side. This brat was quite amused with this little girl before he started to get annoyed. So, why not now? His behavior has suddenly turned so vile. It's such a shame. The hostile gaze of the two beautiful women were like pins and needles for Jun Moxie. So he gloomily left their company and started to whine mournfully. My life is full of hardships. Anyone who has a problem looks to me. What am I, a fireman? Then he ran into doing Fang Wen Jian and Dong Fang Wen Dao the moment he got out of the tent. And the two Dongfang uncles weren't willing to let Jun Moxie off either. They interrogated him about what had passed in all those years. That too in detail. In fact, they interrogated him so carefully that the young Master Jun became extremely tired and must have added a few hundred kilos of weariness onto his already tired mind. Good God! Can't you let me rest for a bit? Then Jun Wuyi and Dongfang Wenqing returned in the evening with serious expressions on their faces. And Jun Wuyi returned to Jun Moxie's tent immediately after he had put the military affairs in order. Is it bad? Jun Moxie asked. Guan Qinghan was seated on his side. She quietly opened her eyes and pricked her ears to listen. It's not just bad. It's horrible. Jun Wuyi frowned and sighed. There will be no battle. There's no military strength here. No one is willing to agree to anything. Moreover, many families wish to retreat. I'm convinced that we'll most likely face a rout at the beginning of the battle due to the lack of fighting spirit that's prevalent in the camp at the moment. What? So, nothing came out of this discussion that spanned an entire day? The situation can't be that pessimistic, right? Jun Moxie was shocked. How can people be this inefficient? Pessimistic? That's a very optimistic argument to make in this situation. Do you think that such a gathering would ever come to a consensus? Dongfang Wenqing overflowed with anger as he snorted. We might have agreed upon a decision to end humanity if it were for those great masters' proposals. Every man present here lacks fighting spirit and preparedness. We will collapse in a moment if those Xian beasts attack tonight. It appears that Li Ju Tian is a very incapable leader. Jun Moxie sighed as he spoke. Oh really? The stature of these great masters is truly majestic. But they're still humans. They can gather so many troops for a war. But which one of them has the ability to lead them? Ah. Each one of these men has only ever concentrated on their own training. How else could they have achieved so much? But, speaking of leadership abilities, the greatest Master Yunbi Chen and Master Shi Chang Xiao could be considered a little better than the rest of them. However, the rest of them are dumb in this regard. Especially that solitary falcon, he's a barbarian. Dongfang Wenqing continued angrily. His words have completely infuriated me. He suggested that we must focus only on the spirit Xian experts from now on. He said that we should secretly infiltrate Tianfa and kill many Xian beast kings before making a quick retreat. I wish to wipe his arrogance away. He's genuinely a pig-headed individual. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 337. They wish to entrap me. They should make preparations for their own funerals. Jun Moxie was shocked. In fact, he was dripping with sweat. Solitary Falcon is too fearless. I hadn't anticipated that this man would be capable of something like this. Tian can even track a rat's movements within its territory in this time of war. So, how can a team infiltrate with utmost stealth? Let's suppose we do adopt Solitary Falcon's plan, and a team infiltrates Tian in secrecy. They would certainly be surrounded by the enemy forces, and then the enemy will use their superior strength to annihilate that team in its entirety. This outcome is an absolute given. To die is to die, but this team would basically be killing themselves if we take this course of action. Jun Moxie had come to realize that he had been too conservative in estimating Solitary Falcon's IQ. He had overestimated it by too great a margin. It seemed that this man's head had become like a gourd after training every day with the snowy mountain eagles. So, his intelligence had come to resemble that of the eagles by now. There has been no gain today, Jun Moxie sighed. Tian has declared war. It has given us a preparation time of 3 days before it initiates a full-scale decisive battle. And we're still considering the commander-in-chief. Speaking of the candidates for commander-in-chief, your third uncle is quite popular. Dongfang Wenqing snorted coldly. He then continued in an angry manner. The Silver Blizzard City immediately recommended him. They then vigorously praised the abilities of the Blood General. Then, the Shui Han Manor's young master Li Tengyun also got up and recommended him. It was almost decided on the spot. Those shameless bastards. They're trying to kill with a borrowed knife. They want to use your third uncle's popularity to endanger his life. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. What are your thoughts about this topic, third uncle? Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows. We've come here to settle this matter. So, how does it matter if these people aim to kill with a borrowed knife? This Xian beast uprising is a threat to the entire mainland. So, it must be contained and stopped. Moreover, the upcoming decisive battle is key to all of it. Great men don't do things out of convenience. Someone else will take my place if I don't step up. Moreover, it's not inevitable that I'll die if take up this post. Ha! You mean you accepted it? Jun Moxie stood up and asked cautiously after he had taken 2 steps. I sure did. Jun Moxie replied calmly. Only I could have been nominated. There's no one else. And the prestige of the Jun family would have been hit hard if I were to fear for my life in such a situation and turn the offer to lead this war down. In fact, our family's prestige would have dropped to a freezing point. All the glory and honor of the past which your grandfather, father, second uncle, and your 2 elder brothers earned for the Jun family would have been washed away. And I would have ruined it if I were to covet my life and fear death like this. Therefore I am duty-bound to not retreat even if I may die. A great man earns his name for a reason. They called your name since they were aware that you wouldn't say no. There was no other reason except this one alone. They were well aware that you won't back down. Dongfang Wenqing groaned. You know that it's nothing but a trap. And yet, you're still ready to jump into it? Is this what you call a great man? This is nothing but a fool's behavior. Then, I will die without regrets. Jun Moxie's expression was cold. The Jun family's reputation is everything as far as I'm concerned. I don't matter in front of it. And I will never allow our family's reputation to fall. Idiot. Dingfang Wenqing scolded sharply. You going to war is just a meaningless sacrifice on your part. Nothing more. Real men have to shoulder their responsibilities. And the Jun family's reputation is my responsibility. Jun Wuyi frowned. But he had a determined expression on his face. The Jun family will never fall. Father and Xie will still be there even if I'm gone. So, the Jun family will never fall. And now, I will step forward for my family as a Jun. Anyway, I'm not doing this because I wish to fall into the trap or to come across as a hero. This is only for my Jun family's prestige. The Jun family will never fear the enemy or act cowardly. Dongfang Wenqing trembled angrily from head to toe. He stamped his foot and cursed. I've never seen anyone so brain dead in my entire life. You say something, Xie. I haven't crowned my hair in 10 years. And every night I look at the moon and hope to come to Tian, but I know that the life doesn't go in reverse. Jun Xie chanted loudly. He suddenly raised his head and spoke in a sinking voice. You'll do it in spite of this, third uncle? This matter of prestige is alien to me. I don't care about it. And I'm sure that even grandfather is the same. Your life is more important for us. Also, don't forget that there's someone who awaits you on that snowy mountain. She has already waited for 10 years because of her feelings. And she'll continue to wait. Jun Wuyi's body started to tremble violently, and his face convulsed with pain. His expression became dark in a split second. Then, he tilted his head, and his cheek vanished in the darkness left by the flickering candle. The man then spoke up in agony. It's not about prestige alone. The battlefield has taken millions of corpses since ancient times. Which one of them didn't have aged parents? Who didn't have a lovely young wife? Am I Jun Wuyi special? Am I treasured gold? Isn't this enough of a reason? I've made my decision. Elder brothers, the three of you need not urge Xie. Anyway, I'm convinced that my being the commander-in-chief will have a huge effect. I can at least do better than those good-for-nothing stubborn people. Jun Wuyi smiled strenuously. It's okay if you're going to fight. But is it necessary that it's just you alone? Can't others go to fight as well? Jun Xie rolled his eyes. How can you lead the ordinary troops and clash with this enemy head-on? It would be considered suicide if you were only to lead ordinary troops. But many of the powerful families have sent their people to Tian. And you will need several thousand elite troops for this battle. Moreover, several of them would need to be at Earth Xian level, and thousands will need to be at Jade Xian if you wish to win. How do we find so many of such warriors in the ranks of ordinary troops? So, you must ask them for these elite soldiers as well. In fact, you must even force the Shui Han Manor and the Silver Blizzard City to dispatch their elites in the troops you'll lead to the battle. Ha! What do you mean? A bright light flashed in Jun Wuyi's eyes. We can also kill with a borrowed knife. Jun Xie's white teeth became visible as he flashed a faint smile. And they started to glitter in the flickering light of the candle. In fact, he looked like a man-eating beast as he put his hand down and ferociously said, "This conspiracy to kill you will come with a heavy price. They want us to be finished. But then, every powerful faction will meet their end with us. Who else wants to leave this world? Who dares to mess with my Jun family? How can we allow their plans to work so smoothly? Their fate will accompany ours if we lose even a single drop of blood. And here is where you should be taking the advantage. Uncle. You should reply on your position in this matter." Jun Xie's eyes narrowed as a murderous aura surged out from his body. They plan to send our Jun family to its funeral. But they shall make their own preparations for the time we emerge victorious in this plot. It seems like we'll be throwing away our lives if we agree to this. So, we must have others to die alongside us. These Xian experts want you to die by sending you to lead only ordinary soldiers. So, we will keep that as our condition. And, we won't agree to do anything if they don't agree to this demand. Because that will be a blatant entrapment. And, why should we go to hell when they won't? How come their lives are more precious than ours? And if they do agree, then he who knows who will die. Jun Moxie gave a cold laugh and said, "Rest assured, uncle, it'll be all right." Then, he turned and left. The three Dongfang brothers glanced at Jun Wuyi and walked out as well. Your third uncle has the heart of a man who desires to die. Dongfang Wenqing looked at the full moon and took a deep breath. And the sharp smell and aura of the forest entered into his nostrils. If only I had known earlier, Jun Moxie said gloomily. His heart has been showing signs of depression for a while now. If grandfather wasn't that old or I hadn't been such a waste in my early days then, third uncle would have perhaps he had been suffering from that loss for so many years. Anyone else would have killed themselves numerous times by now, and now, you have arrived. That tantamount to protection for me. In fact, it's equal to me getting a tyrannical patron. So, third uncle perhaps can't bear it anymore. That's also true, the three brothers sighed as they spoke. It's hard to guess the blow that matter must have dealt to your third uncle. Didn't he always have pride as a great man? We would have gone mad long back if we were in his place. Yet, your third uncle has been suffering that torture for over 10 years now. This ordeal of his won't last long, I've decided it. Jun Moxie had gone silent for a while before he softly came to speak these words. The other three suddenly raised their heads to look at him. And their eyes were full of amazement. He would have to face the Silver Blizzard City if wants to erase Jun Wuyi's suffering. Does he think it's easy? I'm going to sleep. I'm really tired. Jun Moxie spoke those few words, turned, and then walked away. What? The uncles were shocked. They felt as if their heads would explode from the confusion. We were discussing such a grave topic, and yet, this brat says that he wants to sleep. That he's tired? Doesn't he know that the Jun family is at the edge of ruin at this juncture? How is this brat so heartless? They shook their heads in unison and walked away. Jun Moxie blew out the lamp. He then thought of a move. Then, he disappeared from the tent. He appeared like an illusion as he quickly moved towards Tian. He was suddenly outside the southern heaven city. Jun Moxie then felt at ease and initiated his yin-yang escape at its full force. His body seemed like a meteor as his incorporeal shadow moved onwards. It's obvious that third uncle is determined to participate in this battle. Jun Moxie settled his thoughts. I must find Long Crane and Big Bear and, as fast as I can. It will turn out to be a case of an accidental friendly fire if those two bastards dared to attack third uncle's regiment, since they'll unknowingly end up attacking the people who are on their own side. And anyway, you people think that I can't kill with a borrowed knife? I'm much more adept at this kind of game than you are. Jun Moxie obviously couldn't act as himself at that time, nor could he show his real face. So, he would have to change his identity into that of the mysterious and skillful expert. And he felt quite happy about this. It's not going to be easy even when this skillful expert gets involved. It seems that I will have to work very hard and very ferociously once again. Jun Moxie felt like a dragon at sea or a tiger in the forest the moment he entered Tian. In fact, he had crossed around 25 kilometers in a single moment. It was extremely relaxing for him. And very easy. Whether it was his outer body or inner soul, everything felt extremely relaxed. And this relaxed and extremely satisfied feeling started to increase his fondness for the Tian Fa forest. This was the most dangerous and cruel place in the entire Xian continent as per the common legends. However, this territory was still giving a sense of comfort to Jun Moxie's heart. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 338. Fortuitous Encounter in Tian Fa. There were waves of Xian beasts on treetops. And there were numerous more that traveled to and fro on the ground. They relayed information back and forth in a continuous manner. Then, there were beasts in the sky to keep an eye on the southern heaven city. They would circle above the treetops for some time, and would then return. They would then be replaced by another group of Xian beasts. It was evident that these new arrivals were meant as a change of guard. And this entire routine had been deployed in a strict manner. In fact, the tightness of their defense wasn't any less competent than that of the humans. It wasn't known how many Xian beasts were there hidden in the dark of this forest. In fact, it could be said that each and every nook and cranny of Tian Fa had transformed into a fatal trap. However, the fatality of these traps didn't do much harm to the young Master Jun. For example, the young Master Jun had just stepped on a level 9 Xian golden tiger's head. However, it was a pity that the said Xian beast didn't notice a thing. So, it merely continued to chat with the few golden tigers who sat next to it. Growl, growl. Growl? Did you find anything or not? Oh. Growl, no. I haven't. Growl. Growl. Oh. I want to eat meat. Oh. I also want to eat it. Oh. Growl. Growl. Did your wife find out about your mistress yet? Oh. Growl, he proudly replied, this is so much fun, there's no way that fated old woman can find out. The young Master Jun couldn't understand them even though his abilities were exceptional. In fact, he couldn't get a single thing. However, he had glanced at them while they were making a lewd wink-like gesture at each other. So, he couldn't help but halt out of curiosity. After all, it wasn't common to see two golden tigers with such a lewd expression on their face. However, Jun Moxie certainly didn't possess that great a translation capability. Jun Moxie was unable to understand them in the end. So, he had no choice but to leave. He was just about to depart when he deliberately used some force to kick down on the Xian beast's head. The Xian golden tiger's head dropped down as a result. In fact, it almost hit the ground. Roar! It got up with its tail straightened like an iron rod. The beast then looked around in an uncertain manner, and shook its head. It then looked around again, and bared its teeth. Growl. Growl. Did you see anything? Why do I feel like something hit my head? Growl. Growl. The four other Xian golden tigers turned towards their comrade. Their expressions were full of disdain as they rolled their eyes. Growl. Growl. You're going mental. Did you have another sleepless night? You look brain dead. Growl. Bullshit. My body is in great health. The Xian tiger then stretched his hairy paw and touched his head. He then tilted his head and pondered for a bit. But the Xian beast still couldn't understand what had come to happen. So, he decided to forget about that mysterious event and lay down on his stomach once again. He then resumed sharing his knowledge and experience about picking up females with his friends. Deep inside the Tian Fa forests, Did you deliver the battle challenge? The black-shrouded person was holding Little White as he asked in a low voice. Ahem. I reckon these arrogant humans will take up this challenge. Long Crane winked his delicate eyelid. I'll go into seclusion now. It's important that no one disturbs me. The black-clad person sighed. I've been feeling the onset of a breakthrough of late. The strength inside my body has accumulated to the limit. And it's becoming extremely difficult to keep it at bay. This battle has come at a very bad time. Be at ease, eldest brother. Your breakthrough is most important. You can't be careless. Leave everything to us. Nothing bad will happen. Long Crane and Big Bear replied in unison. Ahem. So it is decided. But you take care of this little thing first. And try to find its master as soon as you can before the decisive battle starts. I'm pretty sure that there's a huge chance that its master is one of the people from Tian Xiang's donghua family. This can become an opportunity to do some investigations about making breakthroughs. The black-cloaked man then placed Little White in Big Bear's arms. Big Bear grinned and put him on top of his head. It looked as if a black gorilla had worn a snow-white hat. The scene was very funny. The black-shrouded individual laughed for a while, and then his towering figure suddenly disappeared. The speed of his movements was extremely fast. Eldest brother Xian's skills are becoming increasingly exquisite. He will overtake the Lord of the Old Days if he breaks through the 12th layer, right? I can only look hopefully and wait for the rest of my life to tread on that route. Long Crane's voice was full of unbounded admiration and sadness. Ha! We both are losers. We're still stuck at the 10th level. We've burned the midnight oil our entire lives, and we've only reached this 10th level. Big Bear hung his head and continued in a dispirited manner. And we had finally found someone who could help us advance after going through so much difficulty. Moreover, the conditions for his aid weren't very difficult either. But that bastardly Jew Tian had to interfere. I'll catch that old man and eat him raw. He got angrier as he talked. Then he grabbed Little White and suddenly opened his mouth wide like a basin. He then brought Little White to his mouth. And it seemed as if he'd tossed the little creature into his mouth. Then he straightened and jolted as he sneezed with an achoo. His mouth sprayed spittle as he sneezed, and the spray reached a great height. Then he raised his head once again, sneezed again, and sprayed more spittle. Little White was frightened by Big Bear's mischievous antique. So it squeaked and shouted. But the two Xian beast kings nevertheless broke into laughter. Apparently, playing with little balls of fur wasn't a pastime of common bears alone. It was also enjoyed by Xian beast kings. One look at Big Bear was enough to tell that this was a rather typical behavior of his. Enough. Stop teasing it. You'll be in trouble if you frighten it to death. This thing's master and the mysterious and skillful masked expert are certain to have a close relationship. So you'll be caught unprepared if you're accused of anything. Long Crane then looked at a particular direction inside Tian Fa. Then he spoke in a thoughtful manner. I was unaware that Snake King was looking for Tian Fa's sacred fruit. How can she do it at such a time? Pondering over it is useless. We anyway can't have it. Our power is at the breakthrough level again. So our bodies will explode if we act stupidly and take one. And eldest brother had said that only they should have it. In fact, we wouldn't be able to consume it at our stage even if we were allowed to. But I don't know if they can withstand it either. Big Bear caught the frightened and dispirited Little White and placed him on his head again. But he didn't dare to mess with the little thing another time. Then big bear suddenly became furious and stamped his feet. This is all because of that bastardly Jew Tian. That bastard and his jinx of a son. Would such a huge force have assembled here if we had been able to complete the task earlier on? It would have been great if we had made a breakthrough with the help of that mysterious man, and had taken the sacred fruit thereafter. But this father-son duo has made us miss this extremely rare opportunity. This makes me uncontrollably angry. I may not be able to handle the father, but I'll kill the son if I get the chance. We've certainly missed the opportunity. So, there's no use pondering over it, especially at such a critical time. Several Xian beast kings had exploded and died after consuming the sacred fruits when they had appeared the last time, since they weren't able to handle the power. And now, if Long Crane's eyes were full of worry, how will it be any good if we lose several more of them at such a critical juncture? The two of them became quiet. They then looked at the depth of the forest with thoughtfulness and worry on their minds. Jun Moxie rushed like the wind. He had been searching for Big Bear's aura for quite a while. However, the forest was too vast to make it easy for him to find the Xian Beast King. He was moving fast when he suddenly noticed something and came to a stop. This was because he had noticed that the air in this specific area was very heavy. Moreover, it was full of myriads of wild and ferocious poisons. This is an extremely poisonous area. And this was an understatement in the young master's eyes. Even an extremely powerful Xian expert would die due to the poison if he wasn't on guard and breathed the air of this vicinity. These poisons were absolutely exceptional. What kind of poison can be so tyrannical? Jun Moxie broke into a cold sweat. It's a good thing that I was using the yin-yang escape. Otherwise, I would have fallen and turned into a pile of dried bones with the negligible strength I possess. Then, he noticed a rustling sound in the distance while he was thinking of this, and his eyes suddenly turned forward. There was a flash of green light, and a young lady dressed in green suddenly appeared under a tree. Her face seemed full of excitement as she bent down to look at something. The young lady's skin was exceptionally fair in tone. Her face was pretty, elegant, and indescribable. She exuded an innocent and charming aura. Moreover, her figure was quite seductive. To speak honestly, her figure was the best amongst all the young women Jun Moxie had ever seen. The front of her body was convex in shape, while the rear portions stuck out. Her figure was streamlined from her jade neck to the ankle. It seemed as if it had been engineered by the heavens. In fact, the aforementioned convex areas stuck out to an exaggerated degree. But the concave area that followed this natural rise nevertheless seemed very smooth. The sight of her body was extremely thrilling to one's heart. She looked 17 or 18 from her face. I don't know how these people mature, but she has an angel's face and a devilish figure. He had been stunned for barely a little while when he suddenly became even more amazed at another fact: this young lady had appeared out of nowhere in a place as dangerous as the Tian forest. And that too at such a dangerous time. However, he was even more amazed by the fact that she didn't seem to be scared of the extremely dangerous poisons that filled the air. And the thought of this catalyzed Jun Moxie's interest in her even further. An extremely strange plant grew under the tree. It was quite strange in shape, and had a multicolored stem. This stem was as thin as a finger. 9 leaves sprouted out from it. Each leaf sparkled with a different color, and each one had a drop of dew on it. The dew drops rolled back and forth, but they never dropped off the leaves. A sparkling 7-colored exotic fruit had grown on top of the plant. And it slowly exuded a concentrated and wonderful smell. The 7 colors gradually converged into one as the scent in the air became more concentrated. And The various poisons in the air became similar to storm winds, and formed a whirlpool with each scrambling to get absorbed into this exotic and strange fruit. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 339. The 1,000 Evils and 10,000 Poisons Fruit. Good God! That fruit has absorbed a lot of poison. I'm sure that even a spirit Xian expert would die after he eats this fruit. The color of the fruit became richer with the absorption of the poisons. It had become white, pure white. However, it continued to absorb the poisons in a frantic manner. Could this be the 1,000 Evils and 10,000 Poisons fruit? Jun Moxie was shocked. His mind was in a bind, and his eyes had nearly popped out. I didn't expect such a fortuitous encounter inside this Tian forest. I've actually stumbled upon this nefarious fruit. Moreover, this fruit is nearing its final form. As its name suggested, the 1,000 Evils and 10,000 Poisons fruit was a fruit with an unimaginable level of toxicity. Jun Moxie was convinced that no living being would be immune to its toxicity. I reckon that even the legendary and respected immortals wouldn't be immune to such a miraculous and fiercely poisonous fruit. This plant needed an area with extremely concentrated levels of poison to grow. In fact, it needed highly venomous liquids to irrigate it at its birth, let alone grow. Even the air itself required to have a dense presence of poison in it for the plant to have a chance at growth. The most extreme prerequisite was that it required an increasing amount of poison as it grew. Otherwise, it could wilt at any time. Moreover, the growth cycle of the plant was relatively short. And it could mature in time as short as 1 year. However, it needed to absorb vast quantities of poison during this time. Even the 10,000 kinds of poisons accumulated in this area would be absorbed in a period shorter than 1 year. In fact, a thing that was extremely poisonous before its poison was absorbed by this plant would become a pile of trash afterwards. Additionally, this fruit couldn't stop the process of ripening once it had started to mature. In fact, it would wilt or wither if it were forced to do so. The fruit would usually turn white at first, then pink, blue, green, yellow, cyan, purple, silver, and finally purple gold during the process of its maturation. However, the 1,000 Evils and 10,000 Poisons fruit would no longer be poisonous in nature once it had achieved the final color of its transformation. In fact, it would then be capable of curing any poison in the world. Moreover, it could increase one's cultivation to a legendary degree. This miraculous change was quite reasonable. Nothing in this world can be considered as absolute. And anything which has reached a negative extreme would turn into something positive, since things can only move in the opposite direction once they've reached one extreme. Therefore, there could only be joy after extreme sadness. Consequently, this 1,000 Evils and 10 Poisons fruit would turn into a great cure for poison. However, the 1,000 Evils and 10,000 Poisons fruit couldn't be ingested directly once it had attained the purple gold color. And even a powerful Xian expert would explode if they did so, since the power in that now medicinal plant would be greater than that of countless nuclear bomb explosions. The Hongjun Pagoda's information on medicines stated that the 1,000 Evils and 10,000 Poisons fruit was the 6th amongst the extremely efficacious medicines. Moreover, it was an important ingredient for the 9th firmament Dan. As the name suggested, Jun Moxie could refine this efficacious Dan once he reached the 9th level of the Hongjun Pagoda. The 6th, 7th and 8th layer of the Hongjun Pagoda could also use the 1,000 Evils and 10,000 Poisons fruit to refine the efficacious Dan if needed. However, some portion of this fruit would be wasted in these levels after the refinement had been completed. And that would tantamount to wastage of a very precious raw material. This plant would have been called the most efficacious plant if it weren't for its overbearing reactive nature. Therefore, it needed to be preserved in a xian containment box once it has matured in case it wasn't being used immediately after. In fact, even the wonderful white jade containment box would corrode if the plant were to be stored inside it. The 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit would wilt after merely 1 day's time if it wasn't stored in a proper manner. Its branches would then go underground. And the area spanning hundreds of kilometers around this wilted plant would become a barren wasteland. Moreover, the vitality of that region wouldn't revive even after 100 years had come to pass. As for the method of intake, that was simple. One only had to consume in accordance with one's cultivation. For example, a spirit xian expert could take only a drop of its juice, and that would be it. Just 1 drop of that juice could advance one's cultivation considerably. However, one would die if they got greedy and ingested more than the prescribed amount, since they wouldn't be able to handle the immense power of this fruit's efficacy. And there was no room for error in this regard. Therefore, this fruit was desired by every expert. They hated it, and they loved it. But it was a headache, since they would have to resist the temptation of taking an extra drop. Their bodies would explode, and they would die if they succumbed to this temptation. In fact, death wouldn't be the end of their misery. Even the skeleton of the deceased would burn to ashes and disappear without a trace. And they would genuinely cease to exist. However, would anyone who had the opportunity to obtain this fruit be considered a peerless expert? Most of people weren't strong enough to handle the fruit's overbearing power, and would explode to their deaths. Therefore, one could well imagine the fruit's violent characteristics. Moreover, the abilities of this fruit as an antidote were far from just a narrowly saving one's life situation. Jun Moxie would have never imagined that he'd enter the Tian Fa forest and stumble onto such a legendary spiritual existence soon after. However, this was like a case of dark providence. And Jun Moxie felt endless regret at this point of time because the fruit had already turned white. In other words, the fruit had reached the stage where it had started to mature. Several poisons must have given sustenance to the fruit in order for it to reach this stage. Therefore, the toxicity in the air was nearing the state of getting fully diminished. However, it still needed to change 8 colors before it became ripe. This final conversion would require a huge amount of poisonous substances for sustenance. However, it was clear that the available poisons didn't amount to much. In other words, this event with the once in 1,000 years appearing 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit stood to end in tragedy. It would become a spiritual fruit after it had ripened. But it was the most nefarious poison in all the 3 realms before it reached maturity. What use will this be now? Jun Moxie stamped his feet and beat his chest in regret. I would have become obsessed with this if I had known of this earlier. And I would have plundered all the money required to buy poisons to help this mature. The greatest divine Dan in the whole world is in front of my eyes. However, Jun Moxie was unaware that this fruit had another resounding name in the tongue of the Xian beast kings of Tian Fa. Tian Fa's sacred fruit. It was unknown how many fierce and toxic Xian beasts inside Tian Fa had been aiding the growth Tian Fa's sacred fruit. The fruit had turned pure white and fluorescent. In fact, its outer layer had started to become light pink in many places. The process of the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit's maturity was like the rolling of the wheel of history. It wouldn't stop once it had started. Jun Moxie nearly spat blood. His life had become very depressing all of a sudden. Nothing could surpass the sorrow of seeing the greatest treasure in the world at an arm's reach only to be constricted to just looking at it. And his misery didn't end at that. He was constricted to looking on helplessly as it turned to waste. I would use up all my wealth, sacrifice everything I have, even sell my blood to get enough money to buy poisons to sustain this fruit if the heavens let me relive this life. Oh heavens! Oh Mother Earth! Why did you let me see this ruined fruit? It would have been better if I had never seen it. Let me die. Jun Moxie had been extremely depressed for a long while by the time the green-clad girl with the indescribable appearance suddenly issued a hiss. This was followed by a wave of hisses which echoed from the surrounding bushes. Then, a strange stench and aura suddenly surged up. Jun Moxie's blood ran cold. And he couldn't help his hair standing up. One could look around and tell that the entire area had become an ocean of poison. All kinds of vipers, small centipedes, scorpions, 3-foot striped toads, 4-stinger snakes, every creature which Jun Moxie knew to be poisonous had arrived in densely packed groups. However, they then stationed themselves in proper and neat formations, and arranged themselves in an ordered manner. This wasn't over yet. The sky then shook with loud voices. Poison cranes, bat falcons, 7-colored eagles, every kind of poisonous flying Xian beast arrived in huge numbers. Jun Moxie was shaken, so this 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit was actually being cultivated by Tian Fa. I must pay my obeisance to them. They've actually saved several hundred years' worth of poison for this fruit. How much physical and mental strength have they meticulously spent on this? This is really daring. Jun Moxie's heart calmed down at this realization. He then began to cheer. It seems that the ripening of this 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisonous fruit won't be a problem. So, I'll just sit back and wait. As for Long Crane and Big Bear, I'll wait till this matter is over. The decisive battle is still 3 days away. So, there's still a lot of time. But, who is this green-clothed girl? Could she be a Xian beast king? Possibly the one who's in charge of the poisonous Xian beasts. But, this is outrageous. Long Crane and Big Bear have repulsive appearances. So, how can she look so good? This is shocking. The toxicity level in the area had become increasingly low, and the air was about to clear up soon. However, the green-clad girl whistled, and suddenly flew 30 meters into the sky. Then, the Xian beasts in the sky swooped down in orderly formations, and opened their mouths to let out poisonous emissions. This poison dropped to the ground surrounding the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit. Their poison then gave rise to a thick mist that had a very pungent smell. The Xian beasts seemed dispirited after they had spat out the entirety of their poison. In fact, it even seemed as if their constitution had been ruined. They wouldn't be able to recover even after many years. After all, this was the very essence of their lives which they had saved up. The Xian beasts which had spat the venom came to a stop. They then flapped their wings and flew away into the boundless horizon of the opposite direction. They made crackling noises as they left, and it seemed as if they were bidding farewell. And then, they disappeared. Then, another squadron of flying Xian beasts swooped down and spat venom before they flew away. And these actions were carried out in proper order. In fact, there wasn't even the slightest bit of chaos. However, it happened very quickly. It took only a moment of effort. Thousands of Xian beasts had spat their venom and had flown away. However, numerous beasts were still left in the air. And their numbers weren't decreasing with the passage of time either. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 340. I'm stealing this sacred fruit for the sake of doing a good deed. The figure of the green-clad girl suddenly flashed. And, 2 long chains shot out of her sleeves. They went in the midst of a group of 7 colored eagles, and wrapped around one of them that had dived down in front of her. She then used the chains to snap its skull off. The eagle twisted for a bit, and then died a violent death. Jun Moxie had clearly seen that the eagle had dived down. It had opened its mouth, but it hadn't spat any venom. It had acted with narrow-minded intentions, and hadn't expected the green-clad girl would notice its slyness. In fact, it hadn't even started the rise of its flight when it was pulled down by the chain. So, humans aren't the only ones who act mischievously. The Xian beasts do it too. Jun Moxie sighed as he thought this. Then, the green-clad girl spoke a few sharp words to the other beasts. Her beautiful face was brimming with anger. So, it was clear to Jun Moxie that she had given a warning to everyone else. And it didn't matter whether if it were the beasts in the sky or the ones on the ground, they all trembled with fear. She's genuinely a Xian beast king. Who except for a Xian beast king could have such an effect? Countless Xian beasts spat their venom around the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit. A puddle of poison had appeared because of it, while the concentration of toxicity in the air had become increasingly denser. Moreover, the puddle of poison was multicolored in its make. The fruit was in the process of turning pink. However, the ground, which was filled with multicolored poisons, began to lose its toxicity and started to become gray. Then, it slowly resumed its original shade. All the colorful poison had been absorbed in such a short period of time. This fruit has clearly reached the second stage of its transformation, the sparkling pink. The extreme topmost tip of the fruit was so small that it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. And it had already turned blue. The third stage will start so soon. Jun Moxie was startled. The green-clad maiden pursed her lips and whistled. And the scared Xian beasts started to dive down from the sky again. The plant changed its color 3 more times and became yellow. However, no Xian beasts were left in the sky by now. Then, the Xian beasts on the ground started to spit their venom under the girl's command. The green-garbed maiden's face became increasingly nervous yet increasingly happy each time the fruit changed color. However, it had soon reached the final phase of its transformation, and had started to turn a light purple gold in color. The Xian beasts on the ground had finished spitting the entirety of their venom by this point. But the task of spitting the required amount of venom had also been completed. That was close. The green-clad girl patted the pit of her stomach and stuck her tongue out in an adorable manner. That was close. It wasn't nearly enough. The same thought came into Jun Moxie's mind as well. The 2 people stationed in the area, one in the open and the other hidden, felt pangs of relief and sighed in unison. Jun Moxie was in hiding. But the look of desire and longing on his face for that fruit was the same as the one on the green-clad girls. The 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit began to transform again, and it started to turn purple gold this time. The 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit had finally started to turn purple gold in color. This meant that it had nearly ripened. Then, the fruit blossomed and shone as brilliantly as the countless stars. And it seemed as if the shining stars in the night sky had suddenly descended to the forest. The beauty of that moment was incomparable, and can't be described in written words. It resembled a proud and generous king who was overlooking all living things. The event had been a brief one. However, Jun Moxie was certain that he'd never forget the sight of it. This spiritual ripening of the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit is the most majestic and beautiful sight in the entire world. The green-clothed maiden seemed to be bewitched as well. In fact, she couldn't even suppress the fanatical expression that flashed in her eyes. I should put this into the Xian jade case. Then, we can all advance and break through the shackles of the peak of level 9, and officially enter the 10th level. We only need to wait for eldest brother's arrival to start. This process carried a lot of risk since it was a very treacherous procedure. However, she would still go ahead with it. And she wouldn't regret attempting it even if her body were to explode in the end. The young Master Jun had adjudged correctly. The green-clothed girl was genuinely a Xian Beast King. She was a level 9 Xian Beast King of Tian Fa. And she had been in pursuit of this fruit for the past year. In fact, the Lord of Tian Fa had made several preparations for this 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit. He had planted multitudes of toxic plants to create this poison valley. And then, he had purposely cultivated a myriad of poisonous Xian beasts. Moreover, he had been doing this for the past 350 years. 350 years. The 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit needed only 1 year to mature. However, the preparations needed no less than 350 years. Moreover, the conditions in Tian Fa were exceptional, and quite convenient for its growth. Speaking of Xian beasts, the poisonous ones weren't in majority. In fact, there would only be 1 or 2 poisonous beasts in every 10. However, the Xian beasts of Tian Fa had prepared for something as important and big as the sacred fruit for 350 years. And millions of Xian beasts had labored in those 350 years. Some of them hadn't even lived long enough to witness this magnificent event. But they had regularly poured their venom into that area until they had died of old age. In fact, even their corpses had been buried in this area. And this had all been done for that fruit. The Xian Snake King Green Hunter was greatly moved. The labors of the past 350 years for Tian Fa's sacred fruit had come to fruition. She couldn't help but be shaken inside. It's ready at last. Then, the young maiden slowly took out a fist-sized Xian jade box from her bosom. She then opened its lid, and calmly stayed till. The entirety of her actions were clearly indicative of the caution she was treading with. It seemed as if she didn't wish to disturb the seemingly inanimate sacred fruit of Tian Fa. One must wait for Tian Fa's sacred fruit to fully ripen and fall. Plucking it even a moment ahead of time will cause problems. This thought came over and over into Green Hunter's mind. Don't be impatient, careful, be very careful. The extremely bright glow from the fruit eventually started to subside. However, its rich smell didn't vanish. In fact, it became even more delightful and elegant. And it lasted for ages as it transmitted outwards. King of fragrance. No doubt it's the king of all fragrances. Then, the branches above the sacred fruit trembled in a graceful manner. And it seemed as if it was unwilling to fall. However, the stem beneath the purple gold fruit suddenly withered and turned to ashes. This left the sacred fruit to hang in empty air for a moment before it gracefully fell down. Green Hunter excitedly opened the lid of the Xian jade box to catch it. And the fruit was about to fall into that box, when suddenly, the Xian Beast King Green Hunter opened her beautiful eyes wide at the unbelievable sight that had just occurred in front of her eyes. There was nothing in the empty air. Not a single thing. Those untold hardships, the hundreds of years of labor and preparation for Tian Fa's sacred fruit, and then, that miraculous thing had suddenly disappeared without a trace. Counting the ascended and the buried, she was one of the most powerful Xian beast kings in existence in her generation. And yet, that fruit had disappeared from her sight without so much as a sign. What is going on? She was extremely shocked, angry and annoyed. Then, she quickly turned the Xian jade box to look inside it, and confirmed that the fruit had disappeared. Then, the Beast King soared into the air, and stationed herself on top of a tall tree. Her voice was stern as she shouted, "Where has this uncouth scoundrel come from? Be smart, and show yourself. Let this Xian Beast King see who has the cheek to steal the meticulously nurtured treasure of Tian Fa." The entire forest echoed with these words as they surged on like waves. Jun Moxie became speechless in his hiding place. This Xian Beast King is very ferocious. But I won't come out and show myself. I don't know how badly I'll provoke this crazy woman if I do. So, why would I appear in the open and get into trouble? I'm not a fool. This coldly executed plan had left the Xian Beast King fuming. The very able and skilled young Master Jun had secretly arrived, and taken away the fruit right from under her nose. He had been drooling over that 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit. So, he took it and placed it into the Hongjun pagoda. It couldn't be kept outside. Even the Xian jade box might not have been able to hold it for a long period of time. But it would never rot inside the pagoda. Therefore, Jun Moxie had a huge advantage when it came to the matter of exploiting the fruit. "I'm very sorry, little girl, but I had no choice but to borrow this thing. It's a very useful thing, but it's a pity that its usefulness wouldn't be exploited in your hands. This thing is truly a divine object and, not only in name at that. It's a pity that I was left without a choice when it came to taking this away from you. But I did it to avoid a huge calamity. And it could also be said that I'm helping you. That's right. This fruit is amazing, but the wrong dosage will make your body explode. I have put it away from your reach, and I've saved several of your people's lives as a result. This elder brother is a great person. So, you needn't thank me. I only did this good deed for the sake of it." Jun Moxie suddenly felt himself to be a righteous philanthropist at heart. He didn't feel that he had stolen a treasure. In fact, the young Master Jun felt that he was actually saving countless lives as if he was as benevolent as Buddha. He even wondered how a person as fine as him could be born into this world. However, this obviously wasn't the right time for the living embodiment of Buddha to appear in the open, since he wasn't sure how she would feel about him taking the Tian Fa's sacred fruit. In fact, he was worried that she might shred him to pieces in this precarious situation. "Come out." She could neither see nor hear anyone as she looked around. It was obvious that whoever had stolen Tian Fa's treasure from her would have some tricks up their sleeves. Moreover, he had to be courageous to make such a bold move. The Snake Xian King looked around in a flustered and angry manner. She then suddenly let out a severe roar. And it was as frightening as a thunderclap. She had shouted from the big tree she had stood on. But her shout was so powerful that trees for miles around in all directions toppled over. The shocking effect of the courage, ability, and skill of the young Master Jun's actions on the Snake King's psyche couldn't be described in mere words. In fact, it was so lifelike that even the usage of movie-like special effects wouldn't be enough to portray it properly. But that woman genuinely deserved to be called a Xian Beast King. No one else's shout could have had such an effect. In fact, one wouldn't be able to find someone like her even if they chose one horseman for each of the 4 directions, and sent them off in search of another individual like her. No other individual could shout like this even if they screamed to the extent of damaging their vocal cords. This story will be continued to chapter 341. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.